This book is Kickass. Authors, Early Cloud. Chapter 1 to 20. Chapter 1, Entering the Game. Iris scan complete, identity verification complete. Welcome to Legends of Celestials and Demons. Please register your username. After being momentarily immersed in darkness, Shen Jingbin found herself standing on a floating crystal stage. A pleasant-sounding beep could be heard beside her ear that reminded her to proceed with the next step. White clothes warm as jade. After mulling over it for a little while, she decided to give herself a fresh and meaningful name. After all, this name was going to accompany her for her entire gaming career. She had heard that Legends of Celestials and Demons didn't permit players to change their names. If they really wanted to, they'd have to recreate their characters. However, the basic attributes of these characters would be greatly reduced, and the probability of encountering a fortuitous event in the future would also sharply decline. In other words, the penalty for doing so was severe. This was why most people weren't willing to recreate their characters unless some major event occurred. I'm sorry, this name is already in use, please select a new username. The system's tender voice rang out in Shen Jingbin's ears once again. She lowered her head and thought for a moment before she said, "Tinge blue and white flower. I'm sorry, this name is already in use, please select a new username. Brilliant peach blossom. I'm sorry, this name is already in use, please select a new username. Green jade descends like the azure moon. I'm sorry, this name is already in use, please select a new username. Your mom." She'd rattled off tens of names and every single one of them had been registered. What the hell was going on? Notification: in view of you taking an extended period of time to choose a username, would you like the system to randomly generate a name for you? Yes, no. A translucent dialog box suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. She'd already been worn out by the process of choosing her own username, so she decisively made up her mind to just give up on resisting. Yes. The system is randomly generating a name for you. One moment please. The system has randomly generated a name for you. Greetings player Najab, we officially welcome you to this legendary world. Please select the race and appearance of the character you will use while you traverse the world. Najab. Shen Jingbin spat out a mouthful of old blood. She suddenly felt the urge to kill someone. Did you know why she was so careful when she chose her name? That's because her real name was too unpleasant. Shen Jingbin equals Najab. 1 After living with this name for more than 20 years, she herself had nearly turned into a nut job. It wasn't easy for her to play a game with the intention of breaking away from this name. But who would have thought? Could this be the so-called man proposes but God disposes? Notification: in view of you taking an extended period of time to choose, would you like your race and appearance to be randomly selected? Yes, no. She'd already been cheated once by the system, so how could she allow it to continue doing so? Shen Jingbin face-bombed as she hurriedly selected no, before she carefully scrutinized the various races that appeared in front of her, all of which used her appearance as the basis for their virtual form. Legends of Celestials and Demons used ancient China as its backdrop. The races of the world were separated into 3 groups: humans, celestials, and demons. 2 sects belonged to each race for a total of 6. Players could choose to join either of a race's 2 respective sects after undergoing their advancement. Humans, who excelled at crowd control and defense, were made up of Taoists and swordmasters. Taoists focused on control, while swordmasters specialized in defense. Celestials were skilled at healing and magic. Nymphs handled healing, and dragonkins wielded magic. And last but not least, demons boasted high HP and assassinations. Mars had high defensive capabilities, while liches conducted assassinations. Shen Jingbin felt that the 2 sects belonging to the Celestials were too upright and didn't suit her, while the demons, on the other hand, felt far too depressing as a race. So after giving it some thought, she decided to be a human and planned to walk the path of a crowd control-based 2 Taoist. Race selection complete, generating player avatar. Generation complete, Please modify your character's appearance by selecting whether you'd like to enhance or diminish its beauty. Enhance. Everyone has a love for beauty, so Shen Jingbin would naturally choose to beautify herself. The system has determined your beautification limit to be 1. Note, for the sake of your enjoyment in game, please do not select this option. Big Sis System, are you sure you aren't making fun of me? Then uglier it is. The system has determined the upper limit of your appearance's diminishment to be 99, please select the level you'd like to set it at. 99. Shen Jingbin said without thinking, choosing to make herself as ugly as possible. It'd be far too embarrassing if someone recognized her name, so this was something she wanted to avoid. Since the upper limit for her beautification attribute was so low, making it very likely for someone to recognize her in-game, she decided to make herself look as ugly as possible instead. She might as well go all the way with it if she was going to make herself look ugly. Character creation complete. The system's notification rang out once again. Following that, a woman who had a bitter expression on her face and wore a set of white novice's clothes suddenly appeared in front of Shen Jingbin. Pooh! Shen Jingbin suddenly choked on her own saliva. She swore, this was definitely the ugliest face she'd ever seen. The freckles that dotted her character's tanned face was the spitting image of scattered pieces of sesame on a biscuit. One of her eyes was larger than the other, while her eyebrows were sparse and lopsided. It gave her a wretched appearance no matter how one looked at her. What is that thing? Can I give up on my current character and remake it? After much effort, Shen Jingbin's self-hypnosis was finally a success. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she prepared to accept the changes and reincarnate into the game world as this ugly village girl, when she suddenly heard an unexpected ding 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 continuously ring out in her ears. In view of you being the first player in the game to achieve a beautification limit of 1, you've been granted a special reward of an additional 10 points to your charm attribute. In view of you being the first player in the game to achieve the maximum limit of 99 points for your uglification attribute, you've been granted a special reward of an additional 5 points to your luck attribute. In view of you being the player with the highest uglification attribute, you've been granted a special reward of an additional 10 points to your luck to allow you to enjoy the game. We wish you a pleasant gaming experience. In view of you being the first player worthy of receiving 3 special awards, you've been granted the following special rewards: an additional 10 points to your luck, Miraculous Stone, 1, Miraculous Wooden Board, 1. Please be sure to safeguard these items, they may bring about a miracle for you as you traverse the world. Shen Jingbin was a little dumbfounded. Was her personality so good that she was being blessed by the heavens? Her real name, Shen Jingbin, is a homophone of her in-game name, Nujab, that reads as Shen Jingbing, and Chinese may also appear SEC in the future. Chapter 2, The Novice Village. Pleasant sounding music rang out in Shen Jingbin's ears and she suddenly felt faint. The next thing she knew, she found that she was now standing at the entrance of a small village. Many people made their way about the village. Practically every house had a stall set up in front of it with people buying and selling various items. Looks like this must be the legendary Novice Village. To ease player congestion, Legends of Celestials and Demons established many novice villages and randomized each player's starting village. Based on what Shen Jingbin knew, this game had been on the market for more than 2 years. In general, the population of most games would peak in 2 years unless a new version or a large-scale event was held. After which, any growth the game experienced, if at all, would be minimal. But looking at the number of people who were milling about the novice village, making it appear no less bustling than before, Shen Jingbin couldn't help but lament over the game's popularity. It really was worthy of its title as the #1 Vermork. Its title wasn't just for show. Where did this ugly person come from? Is she trying to show off her looks by blocking the road? As she sized up the novice village, Shen Jingbin suddenly heard a mocking voice from behind her. Looking back, she found that a female player, who had probably just created her character as well, was currently glaring at her. Due to the beautification attribute within the game, Handsome men and beautiful women who looked like celebrities were a dime a dozen. Who knows how many points the female player behind her had to spend on her beautification attribute before she managed to make herself look like the celebrity, Bing Bing. What are you looking at? Never seen a beautiful woman before? The female player said as she shot Shan Jingbin a supercilious look. She then swung her slender waist to the side and walked past Shan Jingbin. Beauties truly were beauties, they looked good even when they rolled their eyes. This was definitely an era emphasizing one's looks. Shan Jingbin wordlessly lit a candle for herself and her heart before she strode forward and followed the female player into the novice village. Based on how the houses looked, this novice village was probably situated on the frontier. All of the houses were short and constructed with mud bricks. Due to weathering, the protective layer of lacquer covering them were now in bits and pieces, giving them a mottled appearance. The clothes that the NPCs too wore were different from the costumes she'd seen in dramas. Instead, they bore similarities to the apparel of minority groups. With white as a base, it was embroidered with mysterious and pleasant-looking totems. Additionally, each NPC had a piece of cloth that was as wide as an entire finger's length tied to their forehead. Just like their clothes, this piece of cloth was equally wide and had totems embroidered on top of it. Shan Jingbin carefully examined the totem, noticing that it portrayed several green dragons stepping on magic clouds. These NPCs were likely believers of the celestial race, and this novice village was probably located near them. Crashing sounds could be heard when the beautiful female player entered the village. Following that, several male players suddenly appeared by her side as they inquired about her health and invited her to join their party, causing the scene to become exceptionally lively. Several other players who were a step too slow very resourcefully shifted their gazes to Shan Jingbin, who was standing behind the female player as they prepared to go on the offensive against her. However, they immediately broke into a run once they were able to clearly discern her face, while others who had greater mental fortitude leaned against the wall and vomited. Shan Jingbin rubbed her nose and paid it no mind. Not having any playboys around her was a good thing. This big brother can admire his own beauty. Please proceed towards the village chief's residence to report and to receive your reward as a new player. During their stay at the novice village, the actions of new players would be closely monitored and the system would provide some prompts to teach them how they should normally act. Shan Jingbin consoled herself by fussing with her travel attire as she proudly strode around the group of men who only concern themselves with looks. She followed the new player's guide and walked towards the village chief's abode. The village chief resided at the back of the village. Luckily, the novice village wasn't all that large, so it only took a little while before she reached it. Different from the coarse-looking mud brick houses that the villagers live in, the village chief's residence was clearly a level higher. One could tell just by looking at the fence that surrounded it, and the two fierce-looking dogs that guarded the entrance. Shan Jingbin sized herself up and glanced at the two healthy and vigorous-looking dogs. She had serious doubts whether she'd be able to safely get past these two dogs and enter the village chief's house. Holy shit, these two little brutes. Just wait till this young master becomes an expert, I'll definitely come back and slaughter the two of you. As she thought that, a male player came barreling out of the village chief's residence while swearing. He rushed out so quickly that Shan Jingbin could even feel a gust of wind sweep past her ears. Was this a test that relied on speed? Shan Jingbin bowed her head and looked at herself as she thought, forget it, I wouldn't be able to make it even if I ran till these stubby little legs of mine broke. It's better if I don't put myself at risk. Maybe she should jump over the fence instead? But, rumor had it that the NPCs within the game possessed human personalities, and people who bore the title of village chief generally had a dislike for villains and people who committed misdeeds. For all she knew, jumping over the fence might ruin the village chief's impression of her. In that case, the gains she received would definitely outweigh her losses. Shan Jingbin was definitely a tyrant when it came to matters relating to knowledge, but she was helpless when it came to things such as these. She couldn't come up with any good ideas even after she racked her brain, so she decided to look around the perimeter of the village chief's residence to check if there was any other way of getting in. Unexpectedly, Just as Shen Jingbin was about to leave, the female player who resembled X Bingbing appeared alongside a throng of male players. Stopping in front of the village chief's house, these two large and ferocious-looking dogs didn't even issue a single yelp when they saw the number of people crowding the area. Instead, they crouched down on the floor in an exceedingly obedient manner and, without a hint of hostility in them, followed the female player with their eyes as she sashayed into the village chief's residence. This was why the answer to some things, at times, was just that simple. Virtual Reality Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game Non-Player Character, Chapter 3, Village Chief. One particularly notable selling point Vermorks had, was that they boasted beautiful and lifelike vistas. Shen Jingbin admired the unique scenery here which no longer existed in real life as she aimlessly wandered about. Drifting along, she unknowingly reached the boundary of the novice village. As she'd expected, the novice village that she was at was situated along the borders of the celestial and human races. Behind the novice village was a mountain that towered over the clouds. The mountain itself had a verdant and lush forest, and a single glance at it was enough for others to determine that it was out of the ordinary. Shen Jingbin immediately made up her mind and set off for the mountain. Likely, no one else would be senseless enough to climb a mountain instead of leveling up. The winding trail up the mountain only persisted for a short distance before it was replaced with weeds. Since the trail stopped there was no need for her to continue going forward. In the instant she turned around and started to make her way back, a white streak suddenly flashed past the corner of her eye. What was that? Shen Jingbin hurriedly focused her attention in the direction the white streak went in. There, she saw a white creature that looked like a rabbit, but wasn't quite one. It had run into the thick and solid trunk of an ancient tree before wordlessly collapsing onto the ground, its stocky hind legs continuing to unconsciously twitch. Was this the real-life version of idly waiting for an opportunity? 1. She was left dumbstruck at the sight of this, only reacting after several seconds had passed. Walking over, she had a flabbergasted look on her face. Then, bending down, she picked up this object that had knocked itself out. The system's voice rang out in her mind the second she touched it. Congratulations, you have obtained a dwarf-eared rabbit. Hint, the dwarf-eared rabbit is native to the celestial domain, bring it to the village chief for inspection. Shen Jingbin lowered her head and looked at the object in her hand. She realized it really was a dwarf-eared rabbit. Its ears were so short it didn't look a single bit like a rabbit. Sure enough, it really was part of the celestial domain, even its rabbits had such a unique appearance. Since she received a prompt from the system, Shen Jingbin chose not to wander around any longer and tossed the rabbit into her backpack. Following that, she moved so fast she almost flew as she sped towards the village chief's residence. Strangely, the two dogs no longer put on a ferocious appearance when they saw her. Instead, they looked a little like they were trying to curry favor with her as they wagged their tails. Shen Jingbin always did like obedient creatures. Now in a good mood, she stroked their heads and swaggered into the village chief's residence. Several players who happened to witness this scene were left bewildered by the sight. That girl was so ugly, even the village chief's two dogs were afraid of her. Inside, she was greeted by a man leisurely sipping his tea as he reclined on his chair. This man was exceedingly handsome. He had a slender build and wore a white robe. The man carried himself so well that he put all the other NPCs to shame. Seeing her enter, the man put down the cup of hot tea he was carrying in his hands. His eyes widened slightly and he inched his line of sight upwards. He emanated an indescribable aura of attraction. Before Shen Jingbin even got the chance to lament over how handsome the village chief was, her excellent vision captured the man's face, losing all of its previous bearing after laying eyes on her. Even his cheeks had unnaturally trembled several times. The good impression that she'd just formed of him was instantly wiped clean. Was this NPC concerned with how she looked as well? The man took several deep breaths in what looked to be an attempt to recompose himself before he slowly spoke. Since ancient times, there are many dangerous things out in the world. Youth, are you sure you've made up your mind? Shen Jingbin replied normally and said, "MMHM. In that case, I won't stop you since you've made your decision. Take this wooden recommendation plaque and keep it with you till you've gained some accomplishments. Once you have, you can pay your respects and enter any sect of your choosing. You could even go to the ones that belong to the celestial and demon races. Shen Jingbin stepped forward and received the wooden recommendation plaque before she said, "Thank you, village chief." Likely due to her favorable attitude, the man let out a sigh and spoke once again with some concern. "A majority of the people in this world assess you based on superficial traits. With your appearance, you'll inevitably face some difficulties. I hope you don't act rashly, and instead give thorough consideration in whatever you do. I have some medicinal pellets. They're of no use to me now, so you take them. They'll be able to help you out once or twice when you get injured." Shen Jingbin was caught off guard. She never expected him to have such a lifelike personality, and the previous good impression she'd had of him was slightly restored. As she received the man's medicinal pellets, Shen Jingbin suddenly remembered the dwarf-eared rabbit in her backpack. She hurriedly pulled it out and brought it in front of the man, asking, "Village chief, I picked this up just now. Could you help me take a look at it?" The man's beautiful eyes instantly widened and he stared intently at the dwarf-eared rabbit in her hands. It took him quite a while before he managed to recompose himself before his gaze landed on her face, as if he was trying to find something from it. Shen Jingbin felt rather awkward when the man stared at her. But luckily, he only did so for several seconds before he retracted his gaze and laughed, causing his handsome eyes and brows to look even more lively. The man gave a hearty laugh as he took the dwarf-eared rabbit from her and gently caressed it with one of his own large hands. Shen Jingbin didn't know why, but her precious little heart couldn't help but tremble in accordance with the man's swaying hand. Subconsciously, she felt that this comfortable sensation she was experiencing was extremely dangerous. While stroking the rabbit, he said, "You're a very blessed person. This dwarf-eared rabbit is a celestial spirit pet. In all my years that I've resided in Evening Sun Village, let alone catch one, I haven't even been able to lay eyes on them. Who would have thought that someone like you, who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, would be able to get your hands on one of them?" The corner of Shen Jingbin's lips tugged upwards into a smile. Without saying a word, she cursed him in her heart. "How do you plan on catching one if you've never even taken a step out of your house?" Refers to the Chinese idiom Shaozhu Dai Tu. Every Chinese idiom has its own backstory. You can click the link if you're interested in the story. Chapter 4, The Village Chief's Worries. The dwarf-eared rabbit that Shen Jingbin had just caught clearly meant a lot to the man. A look of joy filled his face, to the point where even the corners of his eyes and brows seemed to have been infected by his mirth. It was said that everything had the tendency to look nicer when a person felt happy. Sure enough, when he looked at Shen Jingbin once again, he now felt that she looked somewhat kind-hearted and cute. "Do you know who I used to be?" Shen Jingbin shook her head and said, "No, I don't. I was originally a disciple of the Swordmaster Pavilion. At that time, during the Great War between the Celestials and the demons, I sustained a severe injury that destroyed my foundation. The Swordmaster Pavilion had always been filled with talented people. Back then, I was proud and arrogant. I couldn't bear the destruction of my foundation and the embarrassment of being ridiculed by others, so I made up my mind to leave the sect. Fortunately, I chanced upon a pill recipe that allowed me to reconstruct my foundation. As such, I started touring the world in search of medicinal ingredients. Over the next few years, I'd almost managed to gather all of the required ingredients. All except the catalyst, the dwarf-eared rabbit. I'd previously heard my junior disciples from Spirit Beast Garden say that the dwarf-eared rabbit fed on spiritual grass, which allowed them to accumulate an abundant amount of spiritual energy. However, their exceptionally timid nature caused them to dash away at the sight of anything. Not only was it a near impossible task to catch them, even seeing them was a challenge in itself. Most people would have only heard of it, but never seen one before. However, when I was still in the sect, I discovered from an ancient bamboo strip one that the dwarf-eared rabbit could only be found in the vicinity of a small frontier settlement called Evening Sun Village. As a result, I made my way over here to look for it. The man paused for a moment before continuing, putting aside the fact that Evening Sun Village was situated in a remote location. It bordered the realms of both the human and celestial races. However, both of them had subconsciously neglected the commoners living here. When I first came, these people were still living within an abyss of suffering as a result of their neglect. The Swordmaster Pavilion has always paid great attention to fated encounters, righteousness, and benevolence. Using that as a pretext to stay here and heal, I naturally couldn't disregard the dire straits that the village was in. As such, I took on the responsibilities of the village chief once I found a place to stay. I tried to provide some help while at the same time giving guidance to youths who wished to travel the world. This could also be considered as my bit of contribution to the Swordmaster Pavilion. Only unexpectedly, after so many years of giving guidance to countless youths, I still hadn't seen hide nor hair of a dwarf-eared rabbit. I once asked the elderly within the village about this matter, and they told me that only those with a profound amount of good fortune would be able to catch sight of one. You're the most fortunate person I've seen in all these years, and as such, I'd like to entrust you with a certain matter and hope that you'd be able to accomplish it for me. Just after he finished speaking, a ding rang out and the system's voice surfaced within Shen Jingbin's consciousness. Congratulations on triggering the hidden quest worries of the Evening Sun Village's chief. Are you willing to accept this quest? Yes, no, trigger condition, submit a dwarf-eared rabbit and have more than 5 points of charm. Before entering the game, Shen Jingbin had looked through some guides on the forums, so she knew that the novice village's chief served no other purpose than to give out a written recommendation plaque. The forums made no mention of him giving out a quest, so the quest box that floated in front of her eyes must be the aptly named hidden quest. There were many hidden quests with generous rewards in Legends of Celestials and Demons. These hidden quests could more or less be split into two categories. The first of which was a one-off hidden quest, while the other was an epic grade hidden quest that could influence the structure of the game world. One-off hidden quests referred to quests that weren't affected by a player's ability to complete it. This sort of quest could only be triggered once and couldn't be triggered a second time. Epic grade hidden quests, on the other hand, couldn't be triggered by other players until the player who first initiated it failed. When that happened, the next player who came along would be able to start the quest. Of course, the conditions for triggering these quests could change at any time. However, regardless of the type of hidden quest they were, one could only come across them by chance. So, what possible reason could she have to reject a hidden quest? Shen Jingbin immediately nodded her head and replied, "I'll help, of course I'll help." Upon hearing her answer, the man was filled with even more elation and said, "That's great. In that case, could I trouble you to help me catch a few more of these dwarf-eared rabbits?" Shen Jingbin nodded her head in affirmation. Suddenly, a new quest appeared in the originally empty quest interface. Quest: The Worries of the Evening Sun Village's Chief, submit dwarf-eared rabbits, 09, hint. Only players that are lower than level 10 and have more than 18 points of luck will be able to encounter a dwarf-eared rabbit. As her gaze fell onto the last few words of the hint, Shen Jingbin suddenly felt the urge to face the heavens and laugh. After entering the game world, each player's starting attributes would be based on the condition of their bodies and the race they choose. However, their total stats wouldn't differ by much. For example, when players enter the game for the first time, they'd only have 2 or 3 points in special attributes such as luck. Or, if they had a little more, they might have 5 to 6 points instead. However, someone like her who had 25 points of luck would definitely be a one-of-a-kind prodigy. Although special attributes could be accumulated further down the road, hidden quests were practically the only ones that gave them out as a reward. On top of that, most players would immediately rush towards the capital city to enter a sect once they reached level 15. Even if they came back at a higher level, no one would take the trouble to climb a mountain and catch rabbits like she did. Moreover, even if someone did manage to accumulate enough luck, anyone who was senseless enough to return to the novice village and climb the mountain would find themselves unable to catch one. After all, the level restriction preventing players that were above level 9 from catching a dwarf-eared rabbit were in place. Therefore, this quest was practically tailor-made for her. Bamboo strips were used in place of paper during the period of ancient China. Chapter 5, Pie from the Heavens. With the good fortune granted to her by her luck stat, it took Shen Jingbin but a moment to complete her quest. She threw all of the rabbits she caught into her backpack and hurried back to the novice village. When she reached the village chief's house, there just so happened to be a few new players receiving their novice rewards. When they turned their heads to look at her, they were so startled by her appearance that their legs felt weak and they nearly sank to their knees in front of the village chief. Someone quietly cursed, "FCK, she's definitely a special kind of ugly. She's so ugly she's practically setting a new standard for it." Shen Jingbin glanced at the player who cursed her without saying a word. After which, she silently walked to the side and sat on a chair. The village chief still had an unfathomable look on his face. When she came in, he cast a sidelong glance at her before returning his attention to the players in front of him. After all, he was a competent NPC that carried out his tasks well. While sitting on the chair, Shen Jingbin heard the village chief gloomily reciting his script to the players. However, she had a feeling that his words were delivered a little faster than usual, breaking the unique aura of a mysterious expert that he previously exuded. Of course, this might all just be in her head. In the blink of an eye, the village chief finished his speech and sent off the new players. The player who quietly cursed Shen Jingbin had his novice reward revoked, which led to him ruthlessly spitting in front of her as he walked past. Shen Jingbin wondered if there was something wrong with him. After the new players departed, without waiting for him to speak, Shen Jingbin took out the rabbits and passed them over to the village chief. The village chief wore an expression that seemed to say this child can be taught as he looked at her and said, "Sure enough, heroes are born from youths. Consider this time as me owing you a favor. If the day I fully recover and return to the Swordmaster Pavilion comes, I'll prepare another meager gift to return the kindness that you've shown me today." Shen Jingbin waved her hand and replied, "There's no need for you to do such a thing, you recovering is enough for me." Several rabbits turned into a streak of white light and disappeared into the village chief's palm. He looked up at her and said, "Take out the wooden recommendation plaque that I gave you before." "Eh?" Shen Jingbin eyed him suspiciously. "That plaque is far too ordinary, I'll give you a new one. With your level of luck, it'll be the good fortune of any sect you enter. I'll have to inform the disciples of the reception hall first. At the same time, I know it's selfish of me to ask, but I'd like you to join the Swordmaster Pavilion." "Yeah right, I wanna be a Taoist nun." Shen Jingbin silently rebuked him while she obediently exchanged her wooden recommendation plaque for a brand new one. This new wooden plaque in her hands looked about the same as the previous one, but it included several additional white cloud patterns. There was also some traditional Chinese characters carved in the lower left-hand corner of the plaque. On closer inspection, she could make out the words Beihua 1 inscribed on it. Almost as if he could read her mind, Beihua spoke up, "Beihua is my name." Shen Jingbin cautiously placed the wooden plaque into her storage pouch and said, "Thank you village chief, I hope you get well soon. I'll be taking my leave first." Beihua nodded his head and replied, "The road ahead is filled with peril and countless hidden dangers. I can't give you much help now. At present, I can only give you some life-saving items. You should take good care of yourself for the time being." After finishing what he wanted to say, without waiting for Shen Jingbin to reply, several white streaks of light flashed out from his body. Ding, the sound of the system's notification rang out once again. "Congratulations on completing the quest Worries of the Evening Sun Village's Chief. Quest reward, Beihua's wooden recommendation plaque, 1, Silver Moon Silk Robe, 1, Silver Moon Silk Belt, 1, Silver Moon Silk Shoes, 1, 5 million experience, 50 taels of silver, and 2000 chivalric prestige. Evening Sun Village Chief's goodwill towards you has increased by 80 points, the goodwill of all NPCs in Evening Sun Village has increased by 50 points. Notification, as you have collected the full Silver Moon Silk set, All of its hidden attributes have been activated. Notification: as you have passed level 15, please head towards River City to enter a sect. What the FCK? There was equipment with hidden attributes. After hearing the system's notification, Shen Jingbin couldn't help but raise her eyebrows that were so sparse they could be disregarded as eyebrows, and opened her storage pouch. She took out the equipment she received as a reward from the village chief and started to inspect them. Silver Moon Silk Robe, made by a Grandmaster Tailor, rarity, purple. Able to grow, durability 50-50, physical strength +5, inner strength +5, speed +3, hidden attribute, charm +4, chance to root enemies, passive. Silver Moon Silk Belt, made by a Grandmaster Tailor, rarity, purple. Able to grow, durability 50-50, physical strength +1, inner strength +1, speed +1, hidden attribute, consumption of player's inner strength decreased by 1%, passive. Silver Moon Silk Pants, made by a Grandmaster Tailor, rarity, purple. Able to grow, durability 25-25, physical strength +1, inner strength +1, speed +1, hidden attribute, reduces player's casting time by 2%, passive. Silver Moon Silk Shoes, made by a Grandmaster Tailor, rarity, purple. Able to grow, durability 30-30, physical strength +2, inner strength +2, speed +5, hidden attribute, player's speed increased by 3%, passive. What does pie falling from the heavens mean? It means this. Based on her many years of gaming experience, the rewards given by this quest were definitely top tier. Putting aside the fact that a set of growing equipment was extremely valuable, just the experience she received that boosted her straight to level 18 was generous enough. On top of that, the increase in goodwill she received meant that the chances of her receiving a better quest from the NPCs in Evening Sun Village were greatly increased. Shen Jingbin was overjoyed as she swapped out her novice equipment. Shen Jingbin immediately looked completely different after she changed her equipment. Although she still looked ugly, the equipment helped her carry herself just a little bit better. After all, clothes make the man. Written as in Chinese. It means 100 blossoms in English. Chapter 6, Dawn's Twilight. Chapter 6, Dawn's Twilight. After randomly grabbing a few novice quests and raising herself to level 20, Shen Jingbin spent 5 silvers at a coach station to hire a carriage bound for River City. River City was one of the capital cities within the game that boasted an endless stream of traffic. With its strategically advantageous position, it flourished at a level incomparable to Evening Sun Village, to the point where Shen Jingbin felt faint at the sight of it. Inwardly, she weighed her chances of success in finding her way to someone she could apprentice herself to on her own, versus getting someone to lead her there. In the end, she decided not to waste her time. Opening her control panel, she added a player into her friends list, Dawn's Twilight. Searching, player found, sending friend request. There wasn't a single break in the entire process. How convenient. If one were to explain why Shen Jingbin decided to play Legends of Celestials and Demons, they definitely had to speak of Dawn's Twilight. The person behind Dawn's Twilight was called Shen Jingchen, Shen Jingbin's brother and her sibling. Shen Jingbin was the type of person with a repressed nature. She'd regularly encounter situations that made her want to barf on the inside, but maintained the same stoic expression on the outside. Due to this, Shen Jingchen loved provoking her. What he enjoyed seeing the most was when the emotions in her heart distorted themselves as they appeared on her face. For the sake of teasing her this time around, he quietly took her secret stash of money and bought her a virtual gaming pod. In the end, not only did this fulfill his wish of making her angry, she even gave him a vicious punch. The pod wasn't cheap, and neither could it be returned, so she had no choice but to make do with it. Before entering the game, Shen Jingchen had very proudly proclaimed that he was a famous expert within it. He told her that she should set her heart at ease and boldly rely on him for any help. Shen Jingbin couldn't be bothered with him. She threw him a supercilious look before closing the lid of the virtual gaming pod, isolating herself from his cocky expression. She originally had no intention of looking for Shen Jingchen, Or at the very least not so soon. However, after thinking about it again, wouldn't she be an idiot if she didn't make use of the free labor available? That guy was probably bored out of his mind anyway. Besides, no matter what type of resource it was, it still had to be properly utilized. Shortly after Shen Jingbin issued her friend request, a pigeon sent by Shen Jingchen arrived in front of her with a letter in its mouth. She took the letter from the pigeon's mouth and opened it. The second she did, Shen Jingchen's infuriating voice could be heard as it exploded out in her mind. To allow for more realistic forms of communication, mails between players came in both audio and standard text-based varieties. However, audio mails were more expensive, so most players avoided using them. Ha 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 ha. Nudjob. What kind of weird-ass name is that? Little Jingjing, have you really given up on special treatment? Ha 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 ha, let me get my fill of laughter first. Gnashing her teeth in anger she replied, if you keep laughing I'll hand over your secret stash of money to Mom and Dad. Sure enough, the other party immediately became a lot more sincere and said, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Where are you? I'll come over and find you. I'm at the coach station in River City. Come over and lead me to someone I can apprentice myself to, I don't know the way. She revealed her lack of knowledge without concealing even the slightest bit of truth. Shen Jingbin felt that she really was honest to the point of being cute. Ha ha. I didn't laugh. I really didn't laugh. Wait for me, I'll be right over. I'll give you 2 minutes. If you're not here by then you can say goodbye to your secret stash. FCK, you're definitely not my little sister. Not bothering to reply to him, she turned to look at her surroundings. In the end, she sat next to a coachman and waited for Shen Jingchen to pick her up. There were many players in River City, especially with the number of coachmen around. She didn't know why, but people around here seemed to enjoy hurting their eyes. All of the passers-by couldn't help but cast their gazes at Shen Jingbin who was sitting below the eaves and looking so ugly. She managed to open up a new frontier. These looks directed her way had caused her hair to stand on end. She only felt the number of eyes on her only slightly decrease after she lifted her sleeve to cover her face. Thankfully, Shen Jingbin's response had been quick enough. Before long, she heard a cry of alarm from someone in the vicinity. Pulling aside the sleeve that covered her face, Shen Jingbin tilted her head in the direction of the sound. The first thing that entered her eyes was Shen Jingchen and his overly beautified face, and beneath his buttocks was an eye-catching dragon. Quickly, look! It's Dawn's Twilight from Jade Sea Pavilion. I'd previously heard that he was very handsome, but I never expected him to be this handsome. If I knew it earlier, I'd definitely find a way to get into Jade Sea Pavilion even if I had to force my way in. That's right, and the top 50 experts on the leaderboards are mostly from their guild. I'd be satisfied with any one of them. It looks like Quiet and Steadfast, the #1 lich in the game, is their guild leader. Rumor has it that he looks pretty good and is rich in real life, which practically makes him a male god. Doesn't entering Jade Sea Pavilion mean we get to associate with an influential person? Forget it. Do you guys really think that any Tom, Dick or Harry can just get into Jade Sea Pavilion? Jade Sea Pavilion enforces a very strict criteria for anyone who wishes to enter. Did you see that dragon he's riding? That's a celestial pet. Only an existence as awesome as he is can enter Jade Sea Pavilion. Sigh. I'd really like to be in the same faction as him. That way, we could be together every day. Just think of how blissful that would be. TCH, doesn't he look like that because of his beautification? What's the point? Even if it was because of beautification, he definitely had to be of a certain standard before that. You went through beautification too, but I don't see you looking any better. FCK. Let's end our friendship. Chapter 7. Gossip. Shen Jingchen's appearance immediately caused a group of female players in the vicinity to become restless. Shen Jingbin felt rather amazed upon overhearing their discussion. Was Shen Jingchen really that handsome? Then why did she find him so repulsive? Was there something wrong with her aesthetics? Where are you? I've reached the coach station, Why don't I see you? Shen Jingchen kept his celestial pet out the moment he landed on the ground. He tried looking around, but the lack of a familiar face made him feel a little bewildered. What an idiot! Ruthlessly looking down on Shen Jingchen in her heart, Shen Jingbin stood up and brushed the hem of her clothes. She walked over to him and said, "Don't bother looking anymore, I'm over here." Shen Jingchen's eyes widened and he took a large step backwards as if he'd just received a fright. That can't be. Little Jingjing, are you making fun of me? How could someone this ugly be you? Do I have to mention the red birthmark on your butt before you believe me? Shen Jingchen hurriedly rushed up to her and covered her mouth. What the FCK? Can you not mention these things in public? After saying so, he didn't forget to survey his surroundings, only releasing Shen Jingbin after confirming the people further away from them couldn't hear anything. Shen Jingbin cast a sidelong glance at him before she shrugged and said, "I'm simply verifying my identity." Screw you. Shen Jingchen felt as if he'd cursed out 10,000 times in his heart. You're level 20 already? You're leveling pretty fast. After tossing over a party invitation to Shen Jingbin, he was given a fright by her leveling speed when she entered the party. Didn't you just start playing a while ago? Shen Jingbin was unperturbed by his reaction and replied, "I encountered a hidden quest." Stop wasting time. Hurry up and find someone who can welcome me into a sect. Does my mom know how fierce you are? 1. Shen Jingchen's mount could seat 2 people. Being afflicted by her laziness disease, Shen Jingbin forced him to give her a ride before they took flight. Shen Jingchen shed an imaginary tear as Shen Jingbin got onto his mount. He could already foresee this becoming the next day's top story on the game's forum. The male god, Dawn's Twilight, from the Jade Sea Pavilion was seen with an ugly woman as they sat intimately together on his mount. The horror! Your male god was taken away by a woman looking like that. A certain well-known male player gamed together with an ugly woman for the sake of wealth. Was it a loss of morality or a distortion of human nature? After stepping out of an instance dungeon 2, Quiet and Steadfast immediately received a mail from a friend within the guild. FCK. I just saw Dawn 3 riding together with a woman. Any idea who she is? Quiet and Steadfast furrowed his brows. What's so surprising about Dawn being together with another woman? He'd always garnered the affections of women all along anyway. I don't. What's up? The other party's reply came swiftly. It looks like it really was a major event. Ha 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 ha. I happened to see how she looked like. My god. Truth be told, I've never seen anyone who looked like that before. Even Big Sis Feng looks dozens of times better than her. Who would have thought that after being so unrestrained and garnering the affection of many women, Dawn would actually have such unique tastes? So you're reveling in the misfortune of others? No, definitely not. It's just that bitch keeps snatching all the girls I set my eyes on. Now with all this happening to him, I couldn't help but gossip a little. At the same time, I wanted to see if I could get some of the inside story on what happened so I could make fun of him. But you look like you don't know anything, so forget it. I'll ask other people instead. After putting away the carrier pigeon, Quiet and Steadfast called out his mount and made his way towards the warehouse in the capital. Along the way, he wondered how her appearance was enough to make his friend think he could use it to launch an attack on Dawn. However, these things had nothing to do with him. Opening his quest log, his gaze fell onto the gold-colored quest and his eyes twinkled. It had been a long time since he received the quest, but he wasn't able to make any headway even till now. Was giving up his only option? No, he'd put in far too much effort in getting the quest to just give up here. Additionally, the people from Life at First Sight seemed to be plotting something in secret. They had been carrying out a lot of underground activities recently, so he needed to use this quest to raise the strength of Jade Sea Pavilion. No matter what, he had to complete this quest. Closing his quest log, Quiet and Steadfast rearranged the items in his backpack and placed them in the warehouse. After which, he said his farewells to his guild members before logging off. Chapter 8, Entering a Sect. People who had unique appearances were always the center of attention wherever they went. With the good fortune that Shen Jingbin's face ushered in, Shen Jingchen was faced with an unprecedented amount of attention as he led Shen Jingbin over to the reception hall. "Which sect are you planning to enter?" Standing at the entrance, Shen Jingchen surveyed the bustling reception hall before turning to ask her. Shen Jingbin replied without the slightest bit of hesitation, "White Cloud Temple." Having heard what she said, Shen Jingchen immediately wore an expression on his face that seemed to say "I knew it" as he looked at Shen Jingbin. Shen Jingbin glared back at him before she walked past him and made her way towards White Cloud Temple's reception hall. Shen Jingchen couldn't hold himself back any longer and a cold shiver ran through his body. That expression of hers truly gave him a feeling of ecstasy. As a Taoist temple, White Cloud Temple required its disciples to don its signature green Taoist robe. Although it looked a lot better than its real-life counterpart, it was a little lacking when compared to the attire of the other sects. This, coupled with the fact that their weapon was a horsetail whisk, meant that the average person had trouble coming to terms with swishing around what was basically a chicken feather duster in battle. Because of this, the number of people who were willing to join White Cloud Temple was much less than the other sects. But the reason why she felt that White Cloud Temple wasn't as popular as the other sects, was because it walked the path of crowd control-based support. White Cloud Temple held a position of mediocrity in the game. In an era where everyone wanted to manifest their personality, being mediocre clearly wasn't welcomed by the younger generation. However, there are benefits to having less people as well. Shen Jingbin silently queued at the back of the line. Her turn came a short while later. "Young hero, are you planning to join White Cloud Temple? Please take out your wooden recommendation plaque." In accordance with the NPC's instructions, Shen Jingbin took out the wooden plaque given by the village chief. When she handed it over, she heard the Taoist wearing a green robe exclaim with astonishment, Is this a recommendation plaque personally made by Senior Beihua?" Senior Beihua was the last disciple of the Swordmaster Pavilion's founder, but he unfortunately disappeared during the Great War between the Celestials and Demons. Swordmaster Pavilion and my White Cloud Temple have spent many years looking, but were unable to find any trace of him. However, today Young Hero has come with his wooden recommendation plaque in hand and likely bears news of him as well. Since this is a serious matter, can Young Hero wait here for a moment while I consult the temple for instructions before I give you an answer? Shen Jingbin gave an expressionless nod of her head, but inwardly she was in a daze after hearing what this Taoist said. The village chief had such an impressive background? If I'd known earlier I would have tried to curry favor with him. After leaving for a short while, the Taoist hurriedly returned with two elderly men in tow. The appearance of the two elderly men immediately caused the bustling reception hall to become even more lively. Look at White Cloud Temple's side. The sect leaders from White Cloud Temple and Swordmaster Pavilion have both appeared. What the hell? Is that a hidden quest? What the FCK, where did the attending disciple from my demon race run off to? Why the hell did he run off after sect leaders from the other sects showed up? Does the demon race even have any solidarity left? The sect leader from the Swordmaster Pavilion looks more handsome than the one from White Cloud Temple. These two are boss-level existences amongst humans. Is it alright for them to just run out like this? Shen Jingbin didn't care for the chatter of the surrounding players. All of her attention was focused on the two elders in front of her. The slightly younger of the two urgently asked, "Young hero, might I ask where my disciple is now? This is a matter of grave importance. I hope young hero will be able to provide all the details." This elder was probably the Swordmaster Pavilion's sect leader. Shen Jingbin looked at him and didn't keep him in suspense. "This wooden recommendation plaque was given to me by the village elder of Evening Sun Village." Evening Sun Village. Upon hearing this, the sect leader from the Swordmaster Pavilion repeated its name, appearing as if he were deep in thought. Evening Sun Village. I've lived for so many years but never have I heard of this place before. Does young hero know what's so special about this place? White Cloud Temple's sect leader asked. Shen Jingbin was speechless. You're an NPC but you haven't heard of a novice village? Are you making fun of me? All I know is that Evening Sun Village is a small village. I don't know what's so special about it. I only heard the village chief say that the dwarf-eared rabbit specific to that place possesses an important medicinal ingredient for healing his injury. The NPC still held the greatest position in the game. Even if Shen Jingbin's heart held incomparable ridicule for them, she had no choice but to reply to them. After she said that, the sect leader from the Swordmaster Pavilion, who was deep in thought, suddenly clapped his hands and exclaimed, "That's right! I once read in an ancient bamboo strip that the dwarf-eared rabbit was a spirit beast of the celestial race. The flesh and blood of the dwarf-eared rabbit is extremely effective in restoring one's meridians. However, this rabbit isn't commonly seen in the celestial realm, let alone the human realm. On top of that, finding one is a matter of destiny and one's good fortune. In that case, if I'm not wrong, this Evening Sun Village that young hero is talking about should be sitting on the border between the human and the celestial realm." White Cloud Temple's sect leader smiled as he patted the shoulder of his Swordmaster Pavilion counterpart and said, "Beihua isn't someone who's short on fortune. Older brother, you can rest easy knowing where he is now. That child has always been proud and arrogant. The reason why he hasn't contacted you after so long is probably because his injury still hasn't healed and he's not willing to show his face. Now, with young hero's help, his return should be just around the corner." The sect leader from the Swordmaster Pavilion laughed as he stroked his beard and said, "Thanks for your auspicious words. Young hero, I, Lu Yanzu, owe you a debt of gratitude as thanks for finding my disciple. In the future, as long as whatever you need doesn't go against the morality of the world, don't hesitate to speak to me about it. I, Lu Yanzu, will use the full extent of my ability to assist you." After saying that, he took a blue-colored jade ornament out from his waist and handed it over to Shen Jingbin. Upon seeing this, the surrounding players, especially the disciples from Swordmaster Pavilion, immediately felt as if 100 claws were ripping at their hearts. Their tempers flared and they couldn't help but curse out. "What the FCK, that's the crest of the Swordmaster Pavilion's sect leader. How'd that ugly monster manage to luck out? Does young hero plan on entering my White Cloud Temple?" However, Shen Jingbin's good fortune clearly wasn't limited to just this. Once she kept Lu Yanzu's jade ornament, White Cloud Temple's sect leader looked at her with a face full of smiles and said, "During the great war between the Celestials and demons, Beihua saved countless disciples from my temple. My White Cloud Temple also owes him a debt of gratitude. Since young hero is planning on joining my temple, then this old man taking young hero in can be considered as returning his kindness back then. What does young hero think about this? What does she think about it? Do you even need to ask? Only an idiot wouldn't accept." The surrounding players unceasingly roared in their hearts. Why didn't they have such good luck? Although Shen Jingbin didn't know all that much about games, the reaction from the other players should have hinted at just how lucky she was this time around. She nodded her head and the smile on the sect leader's face grew even wider. He called over a disciple and instructed him to lead Shen Jingbin to the temple. Shen Jingbin didn't ask any questions either. She bid her farewells to Shen Jingchen and, under the scorching looks of condemnation from the other players, she left the reception hall with the Taoist disciple. However, what she didn't know is that her experiences today had sparked a flurry of discussion within the game's forums. Chapter 9, Entering a Guild. The sect leader of White Cloud Temple was called Song Yukin. According to the game's administrators, he was introduced as one of the top 10 experts amongst the NPCs within the game. Naturally, the sect leaders from the other 5 sects were also among the top 10. After being taken in as a disciple of someone of such stature, Shen Jingbin couldn't help but applaud her own good fortune. She seemed to have become especially lucky after entering the game. Could this be the rumored "the uglier you are, the better your treatment"? Once players joined a sect, a senior brother or sister would explain the sect's history to them, while at the same time bringing them to receive some beginner items. However, in view of her extraordinary identity, the Taoist from White Cloud Temple didn't bring her to the temple's main hall. Instead, He brought her to a small house and left in a very respectful manner. Shen Jingbin tugged at her chin and sized up the plain and ordinary-looking house in front of her, secretly guessing that this must be where Song Yuking lived. In general, most experts loved maintaining a low profile like this. Sure enough, after a while Song Yuking arrived and led her into the house. Once inside, Song Yuking didn't say or give her anything special. On the contrary, he followed standard procedure and explained White Cloud Temple's history to her. He also gave her several martial arts skill books, a disciple's robe, a weapon and some armor. Following that, she was chased out of the house with a swish of Taoist song sleeve. He didn't forget to add another sentence on top of that either: "The master has led you to the door, now the rest is up to you. My disciple, you should go out and experience the world. Experience the world so that you can have a better appreciation of life. What about the benefits of being a sect leader's disciple? What about the promised good treatment? Why did it all disappear?" With a few books and a messy pile of items in hand, Shen Jingbin made her way towards the entrance of White Cloud Temple while complaining. When she had her fill, she wore her new Taoist robes and armor and waited at the entrance for Shen Jingchen. While waiting, she thumbed through White Cloud Temple's basic skill books to pass the time. In the game, players weren't allowed to enter the grounds of unaffiliated sects unless it was part of a quest. They'd be swiftly taken care of the moment their unauthorized entry was discovered. This was why Shen Jingchen didn't follow her over to White Cloud Temple. Instead, he told her to wait for him at the entrance. Shen Jingbin didn't have many skill books in hand, totaling up to only 8. 5 were single target attacks while the other 3 were AoE attacks. These skill books disappeared after being flipped through once. At the same time, 8 new icons appeared in her originally empty skill window. Although her level was rather low and her skills were weak, the additional negative status effects attached to all of her skills made her feel that the future growth of her character was pretty good. However, it used up a little more inner strength as well. Within the game, players who just entered a sect were only able to learn a few basic skills. If they wanted to learn martial arts of a higher rank, they could do quests, which came in the form of killing monsters, for the sect and accumulate enough prestige points to exchange them for higher ranking skills. Otherwise, those with the ability to do so could also create their own skills. As a result, most players that entered a sect would only have 4 to 5 basic skills. Someone like Shen Jingbin, who started off with 8 skills, was an outlier. This was all due to the benefits afforded to her by entering the temple through her connection with the sect leader. But, she clearly didn't know about this. The sect disciple's robe that Shen Jingbin received was a permanent fashion set. Sect disciples were required to wear their sect's attire at all times when they were within the sect's compound. If they didn't, they might be mistaken as intruders by the patrolling NPCs and be taken out. Thankfully, the game had very kindly given players another 2 permanent fashion slots for them to switch to, saving a fair bit of trouble for players. After asking around, Shen Jingbin designated her disciples' robes as her main fashion set, making it more convenient for her to switch back to in the future. Shen Jingchen quietly stood to the side. He repeatedly shook his head and sighed as he watched her turn from an unbearably ugly village girl to a world-shakingly ugly Taoist nun. Sigh, he'd originally planned on showing off his little sister to his comrades in hopes of evoking feelings of jealousy and envy at the sight of her. But now that she looked like this, he didn't even feel like admitting he had a sister. "Oh right, come over to my guild. Although you haven't met our acceptance requirements, you're the disciple of White Cloud Temple's sect leader. Your identity is different from the others, so I don't think all that many people would be against you joining." Shen Jingchen brought Shen Jingbin along as they slowly walked towards the heart of River City. However, Shen Jingchen felt as if he was forgetting something. This feeling continued to nag at him until he saw one of his friends from the guild call out to him with a gossipy look on their face. It was then that he realized he forgot to add her into the guild. "There's too many people. It's too troublesome. I don't want to go." Shen Jingbin immediately rejected him without a second thought. Shen Jingchen clenched his teeth and said, "There's no point rejecting, I'll have to trouble you to come. You damn pervert, you'll definitely try to cause trouble for me once I take my eyes off you. Rather than letting you free and risk you turning into my enemy in the future, it'd be better if I kept you close by so I can keep an eye on you." After saying that, a guild invitation was thrown over to her. "The world is filled with danger. It's best for you to charge towards the heavens with your companions. Player Dawn's Twilight invites you to join the guild, Jade Sea Pavilion. Do you agree to join?" Yes, no. Looking at Shen Jingchen's furious expression, Shen Jingbin, who had originally planned on declining, stopped her hand and selected yes. "You have joined Jade Sea Pavilion. Till now, both parties have been separated by the land and sea. Now joined, may you work together to better yourselves and overcome your tribulations." Chapter 10, Jade Sea Pavilion. You have joined Jade Sea Pavilion. Till now, both parties have been separated by the land and sea. Now joined, may you work together to better yourselves and overcome your tribulations. After the system's notification, a translucent chat window popped up in front of Shen Jingbin's eyes, the words on it flying by at incredible speeds. The guilds and legends of celestials and demons used a chat window for communication to prevent large guilds from creating too much of a commotion. When a player entered a guild, the chat window that was closed by default would automatically open so the player could interact with their new guildmates. Guild System Announcement: there is strength in numbers. Congratulations to player Najab for joining the guild. Guild: I'm not a weirdo. What the FCK, that name is so cool. Guild: I'm really not a weirdo, it's even cooler than our names. Guild: actually, I am a weirdo, I bet my ass on this person being a guy. Guild: I'm a weirdo, dare to hit me, I'll throw in my ass as well and bet that he's gay. Guild: Jiddle Flower, can you four be a little more reserved? You're gonna scare off the newcomer. Guild: Long life, don't be afraid newbie, Big Brother will protect you. Guild: Eternal rest, the one on top is an idiot. Don't worry newbie, Big Sister will protect you. Guild: Slight chill, only level 20. Who took this person in? Guild: Dawn's Twilight, I did, that person's my friend. It's their first time playing the game, please look after them. Guild: Slight chill, oh, personal connections. How interesting. Shen Jingbin had already typed out her greetings in the chat window, but upon seeing what Slight Chill wrote, she suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Shen Jingbin silently deleted what she wrote and turned to face Shen Jingchen. Shen Jingchen's handsome face fell. He took a deep breath and gave her a look that seemed to say, "Don't worry, your big brother will take care of everything." In truth, Shen Jingbin really felt like saying, "You were the one that dragged me into the guild, so you're definitely gonna be the one to handle it if anything comes up." Guild: Dawn's Twilight, personal connections are also a form of strength. At the very least, she isn't inferior to you. Guild: Slight chill, what a joke. Are you saying I can't even compare to a level 20 noob? Are you blind or an idiot? Guild: Yanman Imperial Sister, let's talk things out nicely, what's the point of quarreling every day? Slight chill, don't be so sarcastic towards others. Dawn's Twilight, you should know the guild's rules for accepting new members. Give me a valid reason to keep her. Guild: Dawn's Twilight, she's the noob who was taken in as a disciple by White Cloud Temple's sect leader. Quite a few players were immediately blown out of hiding when he said that. Guild: Lingering White Clouds, what the FCK? The old guy from White Cloud Temple accepted this lucky bastard as his disciple? Guild: 8 national treasures, hurry up and let us take a look at them. Come on, say something. Shen Jingbin very obediently typed the word something into the chat window. Guild: Nudge up, something. Guild: Next week is unlikely, ha ha ha, let's keep her. Let's keep this guy. Who cares about level and equipment? All you need is a bit of time and money and you'll be able to square it off, but you can't just pay an illustrious NPC to take you in as their disciple. I've decided, we'll keep the new guy and no one can say otherwise. Hey new guy, you can hang out with Big Brother next time. Guild: Nudge up, MHMM, thank you. The player called Slightchill no longer said anything once next week is unlikely made his declaration. The group of lurkers, on the other hand, extended their greetings towards her in succession, making her feel a little overwhelmed by the attention. She reached out her hand and viciously pinched Shen Jingchen's arm before asking, "Who's that? What's the big deal about me becoming Song Yuking's disciple?" Shen Jingbin had placed a fair bit of force into that pinch of hers, which left Shen Jingchen crying out in pain. Even his reply was tinged with ragged gasps. "What the FCK? You're far too vicious. My flesh was practically torn off by you." Shen Jingchen gently massaged his now red arm and explained, "Next week is unlikely is one of the founders of our guild. He's also good friends with the guild leader in reality. His good family background, willingness to put in the effort in the game and his upright personality makes him popular with others. Now that he's made his decision, the woman called Slightchill has no choice but to accept you even if she's unwilling. As for the matter of you being Song Yuking's disciple, do you know what the game's setting is?" Shen Jingbin shook her head. How would she know something like this? Shen Jingchen wore a look that seemed to say, "I shouldn't have asked." He explained, the game company originally focused on freedom as its unique selling point when it was first announced. To facilitate that, the NPCs within the game were designed to be extremely realistic. You apprenticing yourself to White Cloud Temple's sect leader means that you're now White Cloud Temple's lead disciple. Putting aside the fact that you're a player, all the NPC disciples of your sect are now your junior disciples. As the eldest sister disciple, you have the authority to mobilize them. Although this game has been in operation for 2 years, and the game's administrators have divulged some information on this subject, due to the information on hand being vague and the fact that no one has ever actually accomplished this feat, people have gradually forgotten about it over time. While no one knows how you lucked out and managed to apprentice yourself to the sect leader, you being able to do so means that you have the entire White Cloud Temple as your backing. Anyone with even a bit of brains wouldn't think of provoking you. You get it now? Shen Jingbin was left stunned for several seconds before she gave a heavy nod of her head. Doesn't this also mean that if anyone bullies her, she can round up the entirety of White Cloud Temple's disciples and majestically swoop down on them for revenge? No wonder next week is unlikely stood up for her, she was practically a cheat-like existence. Chapter 11, The Beginning of a Contradiction. Shen Jingchen's long explanation had left his mouth dry. Seeing Shen Jingbin nod her head, he felt that the trouble he'd gone through to explain things had been worth it. Shen Jingchen cheerfully laughed and rubbed her head before sighing, as expected, "You wouldn't be stupid since your big brother is smart." Shen Jingbin threw him a supercilious look and immediately left. She'd seen shameless people, but she'd never seen someone that shameless. However, she couldn't leave just yet. The storm of gossip that she'd inadvertently raised beforehand was now blazing in full force, preventing her from leaving. A gloomy smile tugged at her lips. It was a smile that made Shen Jingchen feel as if hell had frozen over in his heart. What's going on? Does Slightchill have a grudge against you? Is her hostility due to some unforgivable thing you did to her, like fooling around? Screw off. What kind of nonsense are you on about? Your brain is practically filled with shit. I'd never think of getting into a relationship with a woman like that. Then why is she so against you? Even if you said that you and her aren't at odds, based on the way she acted, I wouldn't believe you even if I were blind. She had some feelings for the leader in the past but lacked the courage to confess. I couldn't help but pity her, so I tried to help her out by letting the leader know. Who would have thought that he'd ruthlessly reject her, which ended up making her hate me? After that, I found out that she, intentionally or otherwise, made up various falsehoods to slander the female players that were even a little close to the leader. She even worked together with other players to pressure them. Slightchill was pretty and had a fair bit of skill. This, coupled with the good relations she held with others, led to many of our female members bitterly suffering in silence. It was a miserable existence. To save them from their predicament, I raised this matter to the leader out of the kindness of my heart. But little did I expect her to stare at me like a madwoman who wanted to tear me apart. Bullshit. You'd definitely be hated by every woman if you smeared their name multiple times in front of their sweetheart. Shen Jingbin was dumbstruck by her brother's logic. It's no wonder he's still single. After pausing for a few seconds, Shen Jingchen rubbed his nose. Also, she previously tried to admit her female cousin into the guild, but I rejected her based on her low level, shoddy equipment, and lack of control over her character. Shen Jingchen, in truth, you'd long since anticipated this, so you prepared these stories for me, right? Shen Jingbin's head was filled with black lines too as she stared at him. FCK, you're obviously trying to screw me over. As a new player, even if she received the best equipment available from a hidden quest, with the amount of silver and medicine she had, Shen Jingbin was still a pauper. In view of this, Shen Jingchen brought her to a system-owned shop and bought her a large pile of red and blue medicine, along with some equipment that she could use. Although Shen Jingchen's warehouse held many nice things, Shen Jingbin's level was still low, rendering them unusable. The two of them stood in front of the shop and perused its wares in hopes of finding anything else that might be useful. At this moment, a carrier pigeon flew over while flapping its wings and landed on Shen Jingchen's shoulder. Shen Jingchen clutched the pigeon and retrieved the letter. After glancing through it, he said, "The guild is planning to enter an instance dungeon to farm some materials and I'm needed to lead them. Do some quests on your own, I'll help you out again once you've gained some levels." Shen Jingchen was one of the executives within Jade Sea Pavilion and was tasked with many duties on a daily basis. One shouldn't look at it as just a game. With a number of interpersonal relationships and other matters to manage, it was definitely no less demanding than real life. Shen Jingbin waved her hand to indicate that he needn't worry about her, and that he should handle his own matters. Seeing Shen Jingbin turn her back on him, Shen Jingchen couldn't help but nag her a little more before he summoned his mount and left. With the annoyance gone, Shen Jingbin could finally have some peace and quiet. Walking out of the shop, she thought about her current predicament as she strolled along. Although she'd managed to easily get into Jade Sea Pavilion with her identity as the disciple of White Cloud Temple's sect leader, regardless, Jade Sea Pavilion was still the #1 guild in the game. The puny amount of strength she possessed was an issue that she couldn't neglect. And, based on her years of experience from reading novels, a guild that was able to develop to such an extent would definitely have some enemies. In that case, a small fry like her would be the first to kick the bucket if both sides were to clash one day. Who knows, she might even become a laughingstock of Jade Sea Pavilion. Which is why her top priority was to train herself up and increase her strength so that she'd be able to put up the fight a little sooner. There were 3 ways to level up quickly in Legends of Celestials and Demons. The first was through quests, the second was hunting on the field, and the third was instance dungeons. The first method was a safe way of leveling, but only afforded an average rate of leveling. The second boasted the most efficient leveling, but required the help of a pro player to work. As for the third method, her level wasn't high enough to start on instances just yet. Until now, the only pro player Shen Jingbin knew was Shen Jingchen, but he had to participate in an instance dungeon with his guild. With all other avenues close to her, Shen Jingbin could only do some quests on her own to raise her level. River City had a fair amount of quests. She managed to pick up some pretty good rewards from them after wandering around the city, bringing her level up to 25. Chapter 12, He King. Players were allowed to enter instance dungeons once they reached level 25, which meant that Shen Jingbin could now do the same. In the past, when she used to play online games with a keyboard, what she loved doing the most was entering dungeons. This was why she immediately sent a carrier pigeon to Shen Jingchen the moment she hit level 25. Unfortunately, she didn't receive a reply even after waiting for a long while. She guessed that he was probably still in the dungeon and had his hands full. Shrugging her shoulders, she opened her control panel to begin her investigation on dungeons. Even though virtual reality mercs had the words virtual reality in them, in the end, they were still online games. This meant that things such as control panels and other system interfaces were a necessity. To limit the impact on a player's sense of realism to the minimum, The control panel, chat window, quest log, maps, and other windows were usually hidden. When players needed them, they could pull up their desired interfaces by incanting their name. Inputting characters was done through players thinking about what they wanted to write in the interface. All these windows took on a translucent appearance and showed up in the top left-hand corner of a player's field of vision. Level 25 players were still considered newbies, so there were a few dungeons available to them. On top of that, they were mostly for Exp 1. They weren't all that difficult to complete and they didn't drop any good items. After looking at it for a while, she decided to slowly work her way up from the first dungeon. Shen Jingbin ran up to the entrance of the first dungeon and squatted in front of it, intent on seeing if there'd be any kind souls who were willing to take her along. In reality, she'd been far too optimistic. While waiting, someone who had the appearance of a sweet-looking younger sister conceitedly walked in front of her. After casting a glance at Shen Jingbin, she looked as if she'd received a huge shock and cried out, "Oh my god, when did another ugly monster appear? Brother Mao, quickly! Beat her to death. Just looking at her makes me feel disgusted." The man who was referred to as Brother Mao stepped up, brandishing his broadsword at the person squatting in front of him. He abruptly let out a hearty laugh and said, "Ha ha, Lil Rose. This isn't a monster but a player. However, this is definitely my first time seeing such an ugly woman on this earth." Lil Rose looked down at Shen Jingbin, shooting her a supercilious look as she said, "Don't try and lie to me, Brother Mao. How could a player be this ugly? I'd have committed suicide long ago if I looked like that. I wouldn't terrorize others by showing my face." The back and forth between the two was far too unpleasant. Shen Jingbin couldn't help but face them with an expressionless look and retort with her own brand of sarcasm, "People who lack knowledge should shut their mouths to avoid exposing their IQ too. Aren't people like the two of you the ones who truly deserve to commit suicide as a form of apology?" Shen Jingbin's comment left Lil Rose depressed. Raising her eyebrows in anger, she retorted, "What did you say? So not only are you ugly, you're brainless too, huh?" This sentence infuriated the girl to the point where her eyes turned bloodshot. Brother Mao was furious as well and swung his broadsword, pointing it at her. "You sure have a venomous mouth. Fuck, hurry up and apologize to your father. Otherwise, your father will finish you off. Just try me." Shen Jingbin patted the hem of her clothes and stood up, absent-mindedly saying, "You're so old, and yet you're still so naive?" Brother Mao's fury instantly rose to its limit. In his rage, he lifted up his broadsword and chopped downwards. As Shen Jingbin was about to dodge, a clank sound was heard, and Brother Mao's sword was stopped dead in its tracks. The one who stopped him was someone dressed as a swordmaster. Is there really a need to bully low-leveled players? Brother He King. When this person appeared, Lil Rose immediately shouted out bashfully, her coquettish voice causing Shen Jingbin to break out in goosebumps. He King didn't pay any attention to Lil Rose. Instead, he turned his head slightly towards Shen Jingbin, looking as if he hadn't even seen Lil Rose, and said in a gentle tone, "I'm sorry, my friend was being too hot-headed. I'll apologize to you in his stead." Shen Jingbin shrugged her shoulders and said, "No matter, either way he hasn't done anything yet." He King's warm smile remained on his face but he no longer spoke. Suddenly, Shen Jingbin received a friend request from him, causing her to cast a look of doubt at him. He King said, "You look like you're planning on entering this dungeon. It just so happens we're entering one as well, we'll bring you along." Disinclined to enter a dungeon with Lil Rose, Shen Jingbin hurriedly waved her hands and rejected, "Forget it, I'm not interested." Shen Jingbin only accepted He King's friend request after noticing his unrelenting gaze, logging off after casually tacking on a throwaway remark. After the white she'd transformed into had disappeared, Lil Rose indignantly asked, "Brother He King, what were you doing just now? That ugly wench actually insulted me. Forget about you not helping me, you even tried to bring her along into the dungeon. What's the meaning of this?" He King gave a smile that wasn't a smile and glanced at the pair who were still fuming and said, "Idiot, That ugly woman is the disciple of White Cloud Temple's sect leader. She's very useful. After which, he whispered softly, the two of you almost ruined this fortuitous event of mine. After crawling out from the gaming pod and still engaged in the act of ridiculing the two geniuses, Lil Rose and Brother Mao, Shen Jingbin heard the sound of her door being rapped on. Please enter. With a phone in hand, the nanny, Aunt Zhang, poked half her body through the entrance and said, Little Jingjing, your granddad is calling. Rising to receive the telephone, Shen Jingbin quietly gave her thanks to Aunt Zhang and spoke into the phone. Hello, Granddad. The voice returned over the phone was one that contained a hint of the vicissitudes of life while still sounding friendly. Little Jing, Granddad just received an invitation to be part of a judging panel for a competition. Although you don't compete anymore, you can still accompany me for a look. I'll send someone to pick you up when I'm back tomorrow. Okay, got it. Oh, that's right. Remember to bring that little brat Shen Jingchen along as well. All he knows how to do is play online games every day. I need to have a nice chat with him about life. Shen Jingbin's eyes lit up as she said, Yes. Granddad. It looked like there was going to be a nice show for her to see soon. After hanging up, Shen Jingbin walked out of her room with the phone in her hand and passed it back to Aunt Zhang, who was waiting just outside. Behind her was a wall filled with martial arts trophies that were so dazzling, they could practically blind anyone who looked at them. Aunt Zhang took the phone and cast a glance at the wall behind her out of habit. She silently lamented to herself, Didn't you say that little Jing from their family is very beautiful and looked like a delicate maiden? Then why does she possess such terrifying skill in martial arts? At this rate, can she still marry out in the future? Chapter 13, Shen Jingbin and C.O. Shen Jingbin truly had an outstanding pedigree. Her maternal grandfather and grandmother were old hands at politics. Now, they'd settled in Beijing to retire. Although they no longer handled such matters, the power and connections they'd accumulated over the years couldn't be underestimated. Her paternal grandfather and grandmother, on the other hand, weren't lacking in talent either. One enjoyed the reputation of being an internationally recognized martial artist with 3,000 people from the younger generation under him. The other was an eminent violinist both locally and internationally, frequently receiving invitations to perform for government dignitaries from various nations. Shen Jingbin's mother carried her maternal grandfather's first-rate political genes, working up a storm in political circles. As her economic support, Shen Jingbin's father was an outstanding individual in the business world. On top of that, her exceptional appearance and standout performance had led to her being repeatedly treated as an existence that was beyond godlike by her school during her schooling days. Honestly, let's not talk about feeling jealous towards people like these. Just looking at them would be enough to make others want to prostrate themselves. There'd be no need to worry about them not accepting such outstanding individuals. If one truly insisted on talking about her flaws, then it'd probably be the fact that she was a woman. Yet she possessed such terrifying martial prowess that could make one's hair stand on end. In an era where qualities such as tenderness and virtuousness were seen as desirable traits in a woman, a maiden who possessed an excessive amount of martial prowess wouldn't be well received. One of the benefits of being born into a rich family was not having to worry about daily essentials such as food and clothing. But at the same time, the child would have to endure what was basically a parentless childhood. Shen Jingbin rarely had her parents by her side since she'd been born. She'd been practically raised by her grandparents on both sides instead. In the past, Shen Jingchen had been spoiled rotten by their maternal grandparents during his adolescent years, which led to him conducting himself in a hedonistic manner. Seeing this resulted in Shen Jingbin's parents pondering over this painful experience. Consequently, both siblings were nicely packaged and delivered to their paternal grandfather shortly after Shen Jingbin was born. Having practiced martial arts for many years, what their paternal grandfather had in spades was methods of disciplining children. Under their grandfather's guidance, Shen Jingchen transformed from an ignorant and incompetent hedonist, into a capable adolescent that exemplified the 5 virtues of youths. It was at this time that the Shen family found out that their baby girl, Shen Jingbin, had unwittingly turned from a cuddly and adorable little bundle, into a little lily one with a terrifying amount of destructive power. When they found out, her father and mother nearly passed out from crying on the toilet. Cack, my adorable baby girl. But, compared to the laments of her father and mother, Shen Jingbin's paternal grandfather was overjoyed. He finally had a successor. There was a saying that went, "Take your enemies by surprise." The small and weak impression his granddaughter gave off would definitely catch countless opponents off guard. One could say that Shen Jingbin had already won at the starting line. Shen Jingchen made his next appearance at dinner time. He leisurely descended the stairs and acknowledged Shen Jingbin with a nod of his head. He glanced at Shen Jingbin, who was seated at the dining table, before looking around at the empty living room. He voiced his misgivings as he sat down at the table. "Why are you the only one around? Where's Aunt Zhang?" Shen Jingbin casually tossed the bitter gourd she disliked onto his bowl and said, "I let Aunt Zhang head home." Shen Jingchen's face immediately turned pale upon hearing that, and he said, "What the FCK, why? Don't tell me you're planning on showing off your cooking skills, that have the destructiveness of a nuclear weapon, once again. Hee, you're overthinking things. I'm not interested in cooking for you. Then what's going on? I keep having this feeling that something bad is going to happen. That's because Granda told me to bring you over. He wants to have a chat with you about your dreams and life." Shen Jingbin shot Shen Jingchen a smug look as his complexion immediately distorted once again. She added, "We'll likely be going back for a week or so this time, so I gave Aunt Zhang time off to have a good rest. Isn't her daughter currently doing her final year in high school? Children her age probably have great need of their parents for support. Moreover, serving a young master like you isn't all that worthwhile either." Shen Jingchen's face fell. "You showing off your culinary skills is nothing compared to this. Hey, why do we need to go over? Aren't we perfectly fine with our warm and happy life down here?" Shen Jingbin added a Coca-Cola chicken wing to her bowl and said, "Grandin wants me to observe a competition." With a whoosh, Shen Jingchen snatched away the Coca-Cola chicken wing from Shen Jingbin's chopsticks and stuffed it into his mouth. Following that, he mumbled to himself, "You're not entering anyway, what's the point of watching? Just saying, but you spend your days watching others fight. You even go pa with other people when you have nothing better to do. Aren't you worried about not being able to get married in the future? I'll say this, your brother has quite a few excellent guys by his side. All you need to do is rein in your temper and your big brother will introduce you to your future husband in a flash." Shen Jingbin glared at him and added another piece of chicken to her bowl before she refuted, "I'm young, beautiful, rich, and powerful. I don't need you to introduce anyone to me." Shen Jingchen choked and said, "Where'd you get that kind of confidence from? You. Ha. Little Jinging, you don't know just how true that is. I know my genes are good, I don't need my siblings to tell me that. Is your brain scrambled? I'm saying that compared to you, I'm younger and prettier. I also have money and power, so what do I have to be afraid of? FCK, I didn't say anything. Just eat." Shen Jingchen speechlessly shoveled 2 mouthfuls of rice into his mouth. Looking as if he'd suddenly thought of something, he opened his mouth and said once again, "Are you still planning to play after you finish eating? Our guild leader will be logging on tonight, I'll introduce you. Otherwise I'm afraid he might boot you from the guild when I'm not around since your level is so low. In that case, you wash the dishes." Shen Jingchen, as expected, my little sis never lets go of an opportunity. Chapter 14, Wu Lane the Wanderer. Having trolled himself, Shen Jingchen had to wash the dishes. After her dinner, Shen Jingbin leisurely made her way back to her room and continued gaming. Shen Jingbin immediately received a friend request the moment she logged into the game. She casually glanced at it and found that the player had a very nice sounding name. On top of that, he was an extremely high level lich as well. In Legends of Celestials and Demons, unknown players who sent friend requests to others had their class and level clearly indicated by the system as a form of warning. System notification: Player Quiet and Steadfast has requested to be your friend. Will you accept their request? Yes, no, Shen Jingbin selected yes. The moment she did, a carrier pigeon came flying over from the other party. Were you the one who was taken in as a disciple by Song Yuking? Shen Jingbin furrowed her brows and retorted, you are? The other party didn't reply. Shen Jingbin curled her lips but didn't give any more thought to the matter. She then summoned the old horse she received from her new player gift box and slowly rode it through River City while looking for quests. She had no choice in the matter. Who asked her to have such a low level and know so little people? She didn't have any means to experience the joys of a giant Wu1 grudge either. As a new player, she could only obediently complete quests to raise her level. Since it was mealtime, there were a lot less players online than there were during the day. Even so, there were still many people who cast strange looks at her. Shen Jingbin frequently experienced such things in reality as well, but the two were completely different. The former were looks of fear and resentment, while the latter were looks of admiration. All this attention had left her feeling a little restless, so she made her way over to a more remote area. Bouncing up and down while riding her horse, she arrived at a narrow, desolate alley that was especially dim. She swept her gaze about the empty alley, but couldn't find any shops that were open for business. It was as if there weren't any NPCs around. Shen Jingbin decisively turned her horse around and prepared to leave for a different area. But, little did she expect to see a silhouette suddenly pounce in front of her, causing her to hurriedly rein in her horse in shock. What the FCK, what the hell was that? She threw herself off her horse and recalled it, lingering fear still clutching at her as she took a step forward in an effort to examine the person who'd landed in front of her. At the same time, she inwardly prayed that this person had better be a player and not an NPC. One had to know that harming an NPC in Legends of Celestials and Demons gave rise to grave consequences. Regardless of whether they were an important quest NPC or a meaningless NPC, as long as they were an NPC, they were the boss. Harming an innocent NPC would erase any goodwill they had towards a player. If they were unlucky, they would even be thrown into the game's prison. She had no intention of experiencing life inside a prison. Seeing her stop in front of him, the figure immediately embraced her leg. Without waiting for her to react, he began to speak while sniveling, "Young hero, a few days ago, my younger sister left to help me deliver a letter to Landlord Yang, who's in the eastern part of the city. I had no intention of letting her go at first, but I fell sick before that. Due to the urgency of the letter, my sister was worried that Landlord Yang might condemn me if it was delayed, so she delivered the letter in my stead. Everyone says that Landlord Yang is insane and loves tormenting young maidens the most. Worry for my sister has resulted in me blocking your way. If it's not too much trouble, please, young hero, find out what's happening in Landlord Yang's residence for me." After his bout of lamenting, the familiar sound of the system's notification rang out. Quest: The Down and Out Wanderer, Wu Lang's request, find his missing sister, 01. Will you accept this quest? Yes, no. After Shen Jingbin chose to accept the quest, Wu Lang immediately jumped to his feet and handed her a map. She gave it a cursory glance and found that it marked out the exact location to Landlord Yang's residence. Shen Jingbin spent a great deal of effort to placate Wu Lang, who was standing at her side and miserably staring at her. Once done, she jumped onto her mount with lightning speed and made her way towards the point marked out on her map. Honestly though, she was no expert at playing the leading role for such a plight. Shen Jingbin was confronted with her brother's carrier pigeon the moment she emerged from the alley. "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?" Not long after sending her coordinates over to him, Shen Jingbin appeared with another person in tow. This person had a slender build, with a head of white hair, and wore black clothes. A veil covered his facial features, but a pair of beautiful eyes could still be made out from within them. Their arrival was accompanied by an invitation to join a party. "Come, come, your big brother will introduce you. This is our guild leader, Quiet and Steadfast." Shen Jingbin sent out the party invitation before he grabbed a hold of the other person's shoulder and smiled at her. "Leader, this is my younger sister, Nudge up. She is the disciple of White Cloud Temple's sect leader. Don't judge her by her current ugly appearance, in truth, she's actually a great beauty. I would have laid my hands on her if she were my own sister. Quiet and steadfast. So this was the person who messaged me just now. Shen Jingbin gazed at Quiet and Steadfast with a flabbergasted look on her face. Feeling her gaze on him, Quiet and Steadfast looked over, his own gaze hovering on her face for a second before he nodded in her direction. Shen Jingbin could have sworn she saw the corners of his eyes twitch. After exchanging greetings, Quiet and Steadfast said to Shen Jingchen, "Should I take your last sentence as you wanting to commit incest?" FCK, what the hell are you talking about? Shen Jingchen fumed, why are the two of you working together to attack me on your very first meeting? Shen Jingbin had never paid any attention to him when he got angry. She turned to Quiet and Steadfast and asked, "Were you the one who sent that mail to me just now?" Quiet and Steadfast nodded his head and said, "MMHM." Chapter 15, The Hidden Quest. Quiet and Steadfast nodded his head and said, "MMHM." Shen Jingchen exclaimed in astonishment, did the two of you pull one over me? Leader, I didn't know you had such discerning tastes. It's no wonder you maintain such a purity of mind." Shen Jingbin helplessly held her forehead and said, "Shut it. Is your head only filled with this kind of nonsense?" "Yup. Are you two siblings?" Quiet and Steadfast asked with considerable interest, "Is he usually like this?" Shen Jingbin wore an expressionless look and replied, "I'm not close with him. Since you guys frequently play together, you should know better than me. Was there any reason behind you asking me that question in the mail just now?" Quiet and Steadfast cast a glance at Shen Jingchen, who'd calmed down and said, "I received a hidden quest. I need to unite the lead disciples from the 6 great sects. And you're the lead disciple of the Lich Palace." Quiet and Steadfast faced Shen Jingchen, who looked as if he'd seen a ghost, and calmly nodded his head, "That's right, but no one else knew about it till now." The meaning behind his words were, "How did you know?" Shen Jingbin shrugged, "I guessed." Shen Jingchen couldn't help but interject from the side, TCH. "Leader, you're not being sincere enough. How could you keep such a thing from me? What about our brotherly love? Our brotherly love. Our brotherly love." Quiet and Steadfast cast a sidelong glance at him and said, "What's that? Is there anything between us?" Shen Jingchen immediately clutched his heart and looked as if 1,000 arrows had suddenly pierced it. "How many of them have you found so far? You're the only one. There hasn't been any news from the other sects till now. Then what do you plan to do? We wait, and raise your level while we're at it. Triggering this quest had very strict conditions, and I doubt it'll get any easier down the road. As one of the main forces in this quest, your strength is paramount. I'll continue doing quests. I'll help you with hunting. Do as you wish." The two of them chose to simultaneously disregard Shen Jingchen, who was pretending to be a curious little baby on the side. Shen Jingbin called out her old horse once again and steered it in the direction of her own quest. Quiet and Steadfast accompanied her by the side as they discussed her quest together. "The two of you have no conscience. I'll curse you both with bad luck." Upon seeing neither of them concerning themselves with him, Shen Jingchen dejectedly called out his own mount and followed behind them. The expression on his face was so vivid that the female NPCs and players he passed by threw flirtatious glances at him. "What's that? Lil sis, what kind of quest did you get your hands on?" Upon seeing the two of them chatting amongst themselves while ignoring him, Shen Jingchen couldn't stop his talkative nature from stirring as he made his presence known. "The Down and Out Wanderer, Wu Lang's request. Ah, that's the one where Wu Lang's younger sister was kidnapped and killed by the local tyrant. He then turned her into a doll and hid her in a cellar. The shock Wu Lang received from having his beloved sister killed gave rise to a beautiful transformation that turned him into a giant hero who vanquished the local tyrant. On top of that, he was the one who resolved one of the 10 great mysteries in River City, the disappearance of young maidens." Shen Jingbin's lips twitched, People who spoil the plot should die. Quiet and Steadfast said, no matter, your performance in the quest will affect how it turns out. It might not turn out the way he described. Shen Jingbin eyed him suspiciously. Noticing her gaze, Quiet and Steadfast instantly understood that the girl in front of him probably didn't know much about legends of celestials and demons, so he gave her a brief explanation on the quest system of the game. The quest system in Legends of Celestials and Demons was actually one of the game's highlights. Its quests were designed to be different from other games. Apart from the main quest line, any actions a player took in branching quests would affect the future development of the plot. This meant that each person would come across different endings. Those that were lucky might even trigger hidden quests, which vastly increased the playability of the game. As such, there were still many quest parties in Legends of Celestials and Demons. A quest fanatic once said that the quests compiled by players would be enough for the game company to publish a novel. While speaking, the three of them arrived at the outer area of Landlord Yang's residence. Without waiting for them to step forward, the two fiendish-looking bodyguards brandished their weapons and sternly declared, "Who goes there? Are you planning to trespass on the landlord's residence? I advise you to swiftly leave. Sabers have no eyes, we wouldn't want to inadvertently harm someone." No one knew whether the designers intentionally created these two bodyguards to look like this, but they appeared to be extremely sinister and made others feel as if they'd stepped into a horror movie. This, coupled with the ferocious expression they tried to put on, resulted in a terrifying visage. Shen Jingbin stared blankly at them as if she had no reaction. Seeing his little sister in such a state, Shen Jingjin proudly stepped forward, patting her on the shoulder before saying, "Never fear, little sister, your big bro is here. These two bodyguards are nothing to be afraid of. All you need to do is give them 10 taels of silver each and you can." Before he had the chance to finish, Quiet and Steadfast threw out two concealed weapons, causing the originally fiendish-looking bodyguards to instantly land on the ground with a thump. Shen Jingjin. Shen Jingbin looked at him and said, "What were you trying to say just now?" Shen Jingjin solemnly replied, "I wanted to say that they were paper tigers. Your big bro could take care of them with one hand tied behind his back." "That's right, that's the way. The story is me being able to take care of them with one hand. Let's enter." After he finished speaking, he walked into the landlord's residence without waiting for the other two, not forgetting to step on the corpses of the two bodyguards as he passed by them. "This is for scamming me of my 10 taels last time." Chapter 16, The Demonic Sex Map. The three of them ran into a fatty the moment they walked into the landlord's residence. "Ah! Who are these people that have the gall to barge into my demise? Guards, seize them." The fatty was around 1.6 meters tall. He was pudgy and had a layer of oil covering his entire face. This person was likely Landlord Yang. The fatty's complexion instantly paled when he saw them break in. He clutched his throat and howled for help while turning to make a break for it. "Tch, how boring." Quiet and Steadfast probably found Landlord Yang's screeching too grating for his ears. Without waiting for the Shen siblings to act, he nimbly sent a concealed weapon flying over to Landlord Yang. At the moment, they heard a cackling sound akin to the cries a wild duck made when someone clutched its neck. Landlord Yang's previous howls now caught in his throat. His enormous body looked as if it had lost its support, landing on the ground with a loud bang. Shen Jingjin stood dumbstruck at the side, only reacting after several seconds had passed. Overcome with grief, he lamented, "Oh my god. I'll say this fellow has never done these kinds of quests before. He's basically screwing around. Screwing around, I tell you. Bringing this guy along to go questing will be your biggest mistake. Did you know? This fat bastard over there is the Landlord Yang that you're supposed to find. With him dead, how are you supposed to find out what happened to Wu Lang's sister?" Shen Jingbin shot him a disdainful look and interrupted him, "Haven't you done this quest before? In that case, wouldn't everything work out if you just brought me over to the cellar's entrance to find his sister?" Shen Jingjin's voice immediately died down. Looking a little wronged, he said, "The cellar was found by Wu Lang. I just followed the quest's progression and was teleported into the cellar. Doesn't that mean he didn't know where the cellar's entrance was either? Shen Jingbin released a sigh and ignored him. She took several steps forward and crouched beside Landlord Yang's corpse. After sizing him up for a moment, she rolled up her sleeves and started look over his corpse. Shen Jingchen, who was still immersed in the grief of Landlord Yang's death, immediately exclaimed when he saw what she was doing, "The guy's already dead and you're still trying to rummage his corpse. Isn't there a saying that we should respect the dead? Can't you just let him rest in peace?" FCK. Actually, I've wanted to talk about your preferences. Look at you, you're not even willing to let the corpse of a fatty go. Shen Jingbin replied without raising her head, "Have those hundreds of episodes of Sherlock Holmes you've watched gone to waste? Corpses normally have some clues on them. Are you telling me you don't even have such a basic level of general knowledge?" Shen Jingchen immediately put on a proper look and said, "I was just kidding, I obviously know about such methods. I'll have a look around somewhere else to see if there's any other clues." After saying that, he dragged Quiet and Steadfast along with him and ran off. Landlord Yang's residence was a majestic sight to behold, but the two of them disappeared from Shen Jingbin's field of vision in the blink of an eye. However, she wasn't worried about them in the least since they were experts. In any case, it was more likely for her to come across a mishap than them. Thus, she once again focused all of her attention on Landlord Yang's corpse. She didn't know whether Landlord Yang was trying to embody the phrase "as rich as a country," but to her surprise, he wore 3 sets of inner and outer clothing even though the weather clearly wasn't all that cold. Each and every piece of apparel he wore was incomparably smooth, costing extraordinary amounts of money in the form of silk and satin. Apart from his clothes, Shen Jingbin occasionally found several pieces of gold and silver from the hem of his robes and other unknown areas. The system's notifications constantly rang out beside her ears. "Congratulations, you have obtained a banknote worth 20 taels. Congratulations, you have obtained a piece of Hetian jade. Congratulations, you have obtained 2 gold leaves. Congratulations, you have obtained a jade pearl hairpin." There was even nonsense like a jade pearl hairpin. Was this fatty planning to look for his lover? TCH, being rich really was the best. Shen Jingbin found an increasingly large number of items as her search continued. Shen Jingbin couldn't help but lament as she looked at the things she had on hand now. Capitalism is the root of all evil. When she got to Landlord Yang's undershirt, Shen Jingbin couldn't help but break out in a cold shiver as she made contact with his slightly greasy skin. Disgusting. However, her fingertips seemed to brush against something just as she was about to pull out her hand. Enduring the discomfort she felt from her hair that stood on end, Shen Jingbin clenched her teeth and groped about, pulling it out once she got a hold of the item in question. It turned out to be a piece of parchment that was folded into 4 layers. This ancient and brown piece of parchment was still suffused with the warmth from Landlord Yang's body. It appeared to be a map. Shen Jingbin eyed it for a bit before opening it up. A ding from the system could be heard the moment she completely unfurled the map. "Congratulations, you have obtained a map to the demonic sect. Congratulations, you have triggered the hidden quest, the mysterious demonic sect. Will you accept this quest?" "Yes, no, trigger condition, find the demonic sect's map after killing Landlord Yang." Hint: only players with a luck attribute of 20 or higher will be able to obtain the demonic sect's map. Quest: the mysterious demonic sect, annihilate the protector of the demonic sect, do the unvanquished, 01. Shen Jingbin looked at the parchment in her hands and silently faced the heavens. Another hidden quest? Could her personality be a little too good? That aside, did the development team really have such sick hobbies? She had to sift through layers upon layers of clothing till she finally found the map on the very last one. Such a setting was way too perverted. Chapter 17, Yet Another Hidden Quest. Shen Jingbin's heart was still in turmoil over having received another hidden quest when she heard Shen Jingchen kicking up a fuss. "Little Jingjing, come quick. I've found the entrance to the cellar. Quick quick quick, Wu Lang's sister is definitely inside. Shen Jingbin kept the map and ran towards Shen Jingchen by following the sound of his voice. At this moment, Quiet and Steadfast just happened to emerge from one of the rooms. It was only then that Shen Jingbin realized Quiet and Steadfast's name contained a Jing in it as well. One, he probably thought that Shen Jingchen was referring to him when he called out for little Jingjing. The cellar in question was situated in a corner and hidden behind a Chinese rose that was in full bloom. Shen Jingchen might have missed it if it wasn't for his hands itching to pluck a few flowers. Beautifully done. Let's open the entrance and enter. Under Shen Jingchen's fervent gaze that screamed, "Praise me, praise me, praise me, praise me," Shen Jingbin very sincerely patted his head. A certain someone felt very satisfied after receiving his praise, but why did he feel as if something was off? Quiet and Steadfast wore a smile that wasn't a smile as he cast a glance at the two siblings. He took a step over to the stone slab that was hidden beneath the flowers and lifted it up, exposing a pitch-black entrance. Shen Jingchen suggested, "Leader, you take point. Little Jingjing will stand in the middle and I'll be the rearguard." Quiet and Steadfast raised a brow. "Little Jingjing?" Shen Jingbin turned to him to explain, "There's a Jing in my name. This is how he normally refers to me." "Oh, so that's how it is." He didn't try to pry any deeper. With a grunt, he took the lead and entered the cellar with Shen Jingbin following behind him. After taking a look around and jumping into the cellar, Shen Jingchen shifted the stone slab back into place. He then broke into a jog to catch up with the other two. "Ah, that's right. I have something to tell you guys." As they were walking, Shen Jingbin suddenly thought of that quest and felt that it was necessary to let the others know, so she said, "I think I received another hidden quest." FCK. The person in front of her seemed to stumble for a moment, while the one behind her cursed outright. She felt somewhat helpless. It wasn't her fault for having such a good personality. Quiet and Steadfast, who was walking in front, turned to ask, "What kind of quest is it?" "Annihilate the protector of the demonic sect, do the unvanquished." "Do the unvanquished?" What a pompous name. That aside, I've never heard of any demonic sect even after playing this game for so long. I say, little Jingjing, you actually know the game's developers, right? You've only been playing for a day and you've already received 2 hidden quests. I, on the other hand, FCK, I've played for almost 2 years and haven't seen hide nor hair of a hidden quest. Shen Jingchen looked very aggrieved as he continued, "No matter what, the two of us are still siblings. Why is there such a huge difference between us?" Shen Jingbin retorted, "You're a genetic mutation, of course the two of us are going to be different." Shen Jingchen, quiet and steadfast, immersed himself in thought for a little while before saying, "The monsters you'll encounter and hidden quests are all special, you'll probably meet them later." "Oh right, how much luck do you have?" "Around 25, I think," she honestly replied. What the FCK? You perverted little shit. How the hell did you manage to get your hands on 25 points of luck?" Shen Jingbin calmly recounted how she raised her luck. "When I was creating my character, the system told me that my character was the ugliest in the game and rewarded me with 5 points of luck. It also awarded me with another 10 points of luck to facilitate my enjoyment of the game. Afterwards, as a reward for being the first player to obtain 3 special awards, I was given another 10 points. What kind of special awards did you obtain?" Quiet and Steadfast asked. "They were having the highest uglification limit, being the ugliest, and having the lowest beautification limit." Shen Jingchen raged, "That's unfair. Both of us clearly look the same. Why didn't I trigger anything?" Shen Jingbin silently ridiculed him. "You seem to have been suffering from an acne outbreak when you created your character. But just a few pimples wouldn't be enough cover up my good looks, right?" Shen Jingchen objected with conviction. Quiet and Steadfast couldn't bear to listen on. He gave a cough and said, "Crying Fish, the leader from our opposing guild, Life at First Sight, had the highest luck in the game before you came along, and based on what I know, she had around 17 points of luck. But just these 17 points alone was enough to net their guild no small amount of benefits. With you around, our guild will probably be able to gain the upper hand when it comes to hidden quests in the future. Shen Jingbin gave a nod of her head that expressed both her understanding and confusion. Chapter 18, Curiosity Killed the hidden passageway within the cellar couldn't be considered long. While talking, the three of them reached the end and a wide stone room appeared before their eyes. The room wasn't large, but it was sparse. The only thing in it was a bed and a stone table. The bed itself had several sheets of messy red bedding and a jade pillow that was suffused in a faint green light. This is the place. This was the last place I visited with Wu Ling when I did the quest last time. Shen Jingchen wandered about the room the moment they entered. After surveying the area several times, he faced the other two and said, "But, I feel as if something's different this time." Quiet and Steadfast took over and said, "The quest is following a different path now, so there's obviously going to be changes to the map." After pausing for 2 seconds, he called out to Shen Jingbin with some difficulty, "Nudge up. When you received your hidden quest, did you receive any quest items or hints?" Shen Jingbin pulled out the map and said, "There was a map." After taking the map from her, Quiet and Steadfast walked over to the stone table and unfurled it. The map was somewhat crude, but the stone room that they were in was clearly indicated on the map. It was even circled in red with an ink brush. From the looks of it, other than the path we took, there should be another hidden passageway going in a different direction. However, we need to find it first. Quiet and Steadfast pointed to a black line which connected the stone room to another area. This new area was also circled on the map. Having heard what Quiet and Steadfast said, Shen Jingchen strode over to the bed and commented, "So we have to find another hidden passageway? That's a simple matter. In general, hidden passageways and the like use beds, pillows, and other things as their activation mechanism. See, just like this one." As he said that, he picked up the jade pillow on the bed. Rumble, the once smooth and seamless floor instantly opened up, and before the three of them had the chance to react, Shen Jingchen fell right in. "His luck seems to be pretty good as well," Shen Jingbin said in a muffled voice after blanking out for a few seconds. Quiet and Steadfast nodded his head in agreement. The two of them glanced at the newly opened hidden passage, before Quiet and Steadfast took the lead and stepped forward. In response, Shen Jingbin quickly retrieved the map from the table before following behind. There was a difference in elevation between the passageway and stone room. Fortunately, it wasn't that great. Shen Jingchen's fall gave him a few scrapes, but it wasn't much of a problem. "Hey, are you still alive?" Shen Jingbin asked without compunction as she crouched by the hole's entrance. "Got lucky, I'm fine. Hurry up and come down, there really is another path over here." "Ah ha ha ha, your big brother truly is incomparably quick-witted." Quiet and Steadfast hinted for her to go first by looking at her. He even stretched out his arm to offer a helping hand, but she unexpectedly jumped down without a moment's hesitation. She then proceeded to roll forward after landing, perfectly offsetting the impact from landing with her graceful movements. Quiet and Steadfast stood there in a daze as he looked at his outstretched arm before wordlessly jumping down. When he landed, Shen Jingchen had a shit-eating grin on his face as he leaned over and gripped Quiet and Steadfast's shoulder. "Boss, I saw how you were trying to save a damsel in distress. Or should I say, trying to save a hag in distress? That's called a gentleman's grace. Then why didn't I see you acting so gentlemanly towards others in the past? Boss, don't tell me you actually like girls that look like this? She's our guild's mascot now." "So alright, I put too much thought into it." Shen Jingchen's lips curled and he loosened his grip. Shen Jingbin lowered her head and started rummaging through her bag. It took a while before she managed to pull out the fire starter she happened to come across previously when He King's group was preparing to enter the dungeon. Following that, she blew at it under Shen Jingchen's astonished gaze. In the end, it was still an item from the game. Just one puff was enough to ignite it and give rise to a small mote of flame. Although it was small, its dazzling blaze instantly lit up the entire passageway. With the passage located underneath the stone room, the way ahead would be obscured without light from the fire starter, leaving them no way out if the path was trapped. Quiet and Steadfast looked at her and said, "You really have a complete inventory in that bag of yours." Without batting an eyelid, Shen Jingbin said, "Thank you." Shen Jingchen roared in his heart, was this what having a complete inventory meant? This was obviously strange. Who would carry antiques like a fire starter around? Every map in the game had its own settings for lighting. No normal person would carry around a useless thing like this. However, it definitely had a reason for existing, a reason that Shen Jingchen clearly couldn't grasp. With their miraculous fire starter in hand, the three of them plucked up their courage and pushed forward. After all, two of them were well-known experts on the leaderboards. Something as insignificant as traps wouldn't even face them. Based on the map, the passage wasn't that long and they reached the end of the passage after a short while. A bronze-colored stone door stood in their way. Shen Jingbin stretched out her hand to stroke it. The moment she touched it, the system's notification rang out in her head. Notification: "You have discovered the giant bronze door, would you like to open it?" Shen Jingbin selected yes without the slightest bit of hesitation. At that moment, the three of them heard another notification: "Please complete the password, curiosity killed the Doge." Shen Jingchen replied, his mouth eternally running faster than his brain. Notification: "The password is correct, the giant bronze door has been opened." The corner of Shen Jingbin's mouth twitched, shouldn't the answer be cat? Quiet and Steadfast was speechless as well, it's probably another one of the development team's bad jokes. Chapter 19, The Inside of the Bronze Door. Feeling as if he'd finally won out in the IQ department, Shen Jingchen shot a smug look at the other two. In response, Shen Jingbin disdainfully snubbed him and quickly strode through the door. After casting a glance at Shen Jingchen's smug expression, Quiet and Steadfast wordlessly shook his head before following Shen Jingbin in. Shen Jingchen paid them no mind. After all, there was a disparity between geniuses and commoners, this was something he understood. Shen Jingbin was the first one to walk through the bronze door. Without the chance to mentally prepare herself, even a person like her, who was normally calm and collected, couldn't help but be a little stunned when faced with the scene in front of her. The inside of the bronze door looked almost like a prison. Many densely packed cages dotted the area. The cages contained young women who were covered in blood from head to toe. Some of them were moaning in pain as they rolled about the ground, while others huddled themselves in a corner of their cage, remaining motionless. The pulsing flames within the braziers on the walls reflected their deathly pale faces, faces which had endured unspeakable suffering. The strong scent of blood assaulted Shen Jingbin's nostrils, laying siege to her mental state time and time again. This was the first time she'd felt that the game might just be a bit too realistic. "What's wrong?" Quiet and Steadfast, who was behind her, called out to her after seeing her suddenly stop. Shortly after he spoke, he caught a whiff of the stench of blood, causing his good-looking eyebrows to furrow. Shen Jingchen, who was the last to enter, immediately cried out upon seeing this scene, "What the FCK? This is way too graphic. No wonder this game is limited to people age 20 and above." Without saying a word, Shen Jingbin put out her fire starter and walked forward. Her quest log had undergone a change upon entering the bronze door. A set of coordinates now appeared behind her quest to find the missing sister. When she tried selecting these coordinates, she immediately realized that one of the cages was now shining. When she walked up to the cage, she found that although this girl was caked in blood, her chest was fortunately still faintly moving, which meant that she was still alive. Ding, the system's notification rang out, letting her know that she'd found the right person. Notification: Congratulations on completing the Down and Out Wanderer, Wu Lang's request. Quest reward: 20,000 experience, 10 taels of silver, 50 chivalric prestige, and Wu Lang's goodwill has been increased by 40 points. Quest: The Down and Out Wanderer, Wu Lang's request, rescue his trapped sister, 01. Will you accept this quest? Yes, no. Shen Jingbin took a deep breath and silently said to herself, this is a game, this is a game, This is a game. Before she accepted the quest, she then started throwing skills at the cage in an attempt to break it. Unfortunately for her, she couldn't do anything about her low level. No matter how strong her skills were, the only thing she could do to the cage at her current level was produce some pretty looking special effects. Quiet and Steadfast and Shin Jingchen, who were following behind her the entire time, unhesitatingly joined the battle and threw their own skills into the mix when they saw her take action. Confining a young girl who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken in the wooden cage was a simple affair, but it was far from enough when it came to resisting Quiet and Steadfast and Shin Jingchen's attacks, shattering after being exposed to their consecutive attacks. Shen Jingbin stepped forward to support the young girl who lay paralyzed on a stack of hay. While doing so, she turned to look at the other two and asked, "Did either of you bring a healing potion?" Shen Jingchen felt a little puzzled. After all, he was an old hand at this game. He'd already gotten used to seeing the lives and deaths of many NPCs and wasn't the slightest bit moved by the scene in front of him. "What do you need it for?" "To save her." Quiet and Steadfast took out a health potion and handed it to her. "These are meant for players. I don't know if NPCs can use them. You can give it a shot." Shen Jingbin thanked him in return, and unscrewed the bottle before feeding its contents to the girl in her arms. "I can't believe you wasted a health potion for the sake of a side character. Little Jingjing, you're still too young and innocent. In the future when you take on epic grade quests, swathes of important NPCs are going to die and be replaced for the sake of advancing the story. Don't tell me you're going to spread your arms like the Virgin Mary and save each and every one of them?" Shen Jingchen quietly mumbled to the side. The girl's feeble breaths gradually started to grow stronger after drinking the health potion. Shen Jingbin gave a sigh of relief when the system notified her that this segment of the quest was complete, and that she could now move on to the task of reuniting the siblings. She set the health potion down and shot Shen Jingchen a glare. Quiet and Steadfast, who was standing off to the side, suddenly asked Shen Jingchen, "Which of the two is more valuable? A living crab or a dead crab?" "A living one is obviously more valuable." "Ah. So that's why. Little Jingjing, you're so shrewd," Shen Jingchen exclaimed after his sudden realization. Shen Jingbin was even more inclined to ignore him now. She felt as if there was an insurmountable gulf between her own IQ and Shen Jingchen's. Chapter 20, Do the Unvanquished. Wu Lang's sister was found, but the quest wasn't so simple. Shen Jingbin gently laid the young girl in her arms down and stood up. Turning to face Quiet and Steadfast, she said, "I need to bring her back to Wu Lang to complete the quest, but we haven't found any traces of the demonic sex protector." Quiet and Steadfast thought for a bit before he said, "Our current position should be within the bounds of the demonic sect. These girls were probably caught by them as well. They might come out if we cause more of a commotion." Shen Jingbin felt that this plan was viable after giving it some thought. She immediately fired off a few skills at the cage beside her. Although she couldn't break these cages, she could still cause a bit of a disturbance. Shen Jingchen and Quiet and Steadfast also followed suit as they launched their skills at the cages around them. Not long after, all of the cages were shattered into bits and pieces. The girls who could move stood up in succession and pulled their companions who couldn't move, but were still alive, and ran towards the three of them. On the other hand, the ones who'd already breathed their last and lay in their cages, instantly turned into a ray of white light before disappearing. Notification: You've been discovered by the protector of the demonic sect. Sure enough, a ding from the system was heard after they finished smashing the cages, notifying them that they'd been discovered. A person wearing purple-colored clothes suddenly materialized from the bronze-colored door. On his head, 3 words written in scarlet red could be seen: "Do the Unvanquished." The way to heaven was open to you, but instead you chose to barge into hell and offend the members of my Shinra sect. Only death will absolve you of your sins. With a swish, Do the Unvanquished retrieved 2 scimitars from his back that were as tall as half a man. He then gave a roar before charging over. Quiet and Steadfast and Shen Jingchen both stepped forward, subconsciously protecting Shen Jingbin, who was behind them. It couldn't be helped. Her level was too low and she was their mascot. Shen Jingbin knew herself well and understood that she'd only drag them down, so she retreated a few steps back where she'd be out of the range of Do the Unvanquished's attacks. In any case, since they were in a party, she'd still be credited for it even if she didn't take any action. There was no need for her to take part. Quiet and Steadfast took the lead to attack. He activated his concealment buff on and indicated to Shen Jingchen with his eyes. The two of them truly were deserving of their title as long-standing partners. Shen Jingchen immediately understood his meaning and began firing off all his skills. A disable landed on Do the Unvanquished, sealing all of his skills that could cause negative status effects while also drawing his aggression. 2. Quiet and Steadfast seized this opportunity and appeared beside Do the Unvanquished in a flash, silencing and inflicting mind lock on him as he continuously launched a barrage of skills. Leches were a close-ranged class with high physical damage. They were characterized by their skills which boasted high damage, quick execution, and low cooldowns. 3. On top of that, Quiet and Steadfast was the number one lich in the game, which made the lethality of his skills even more terrifying. In the past, enemies who faced him would lose the initiative to attack the moment he got close, leaving them no choice but to await their deaths. But this time seemed different. The stunning special effects of Quiet and Steadfast's skills sped towards Do the Unvanquished. Yet instead of a lethal, or at the very least a considerable attack that tore through flesh, only a sliver of blood appeared. In addition, because of the large amount of damage that Quiet and Steadfast had dealt, Do the Unvanquished's aggression was now completely focused on him. He turned to Quiet and Steadfast and charged towards him with astounding agility. Quiet and Steadfast had a great deal of agility as well, avoiding most of the attack with an elegant flip of his body. Only a small part of it brushed past him, however just this bit of contact was enough to take off a portion of his health. Seeing this, Quiet and Steadfast's face turned several shades paler. Players would only be able to see their own health and mana pools. They'd have to guess the conditions of others by looking at their faces. Noticing the change in his expression, Shen Jingchen hurriedly threw out a Swordmaster exclusive skill that drew enmity. In general, parties would normally use either Mars or Swordmasters for tanking in battle. 4. The latter being chosen for its high defense and evasiveness. Quiet and Steadfast retreated to the side and pulled out a large health potion to recover his HP. He then furrowed his brows, his expression shrouded in darkness as he looked towards Do the Unvanquished, who is currently embroiled in battle with Shen Jingchen.